go ahead and call this meeting to order. Welcome to the regular meeting of the Board of Directors of the Vallecitos Water District for Wednesday, March 15th, 2017. Can I ask Director Hernandez to please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Where's Betty Kirkus?
Well, what'd she do?
Huh? Because she would have slapped somebody.
You could have a roll call, please.
Yes, sorry. Got to get tuned up.
Here.
Here.
Here. The next item is adopt agenda for the regular meeting of March 15th, 2017.
So moved?
Second.
Been moved and seconded to adopt the agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Carries unanimously. Public comment. Persons wishing to address a matter not on the agenda may be heard at this time. However, no action will be taken until the matter is placed on a future agenda in accordance with board policies. Public comments are limited. I'm sorry.
Yep.
Public comments are limited to 3 minutes. A request to speak form is required to be submitted to the executive secretary prior to the start of the meeting if possible. Public comment should start by stating name, address, and topic. The board is not permitted during this time to enter into dialogue with the speaker. I have no requests to speak for this part of the public comment. They're all on item 2.1, the pump zone charge item. So you'll be able to speak when we get to that item. Okay, next is a consent calendar. All matters listed under the consent calendar will be voted upon by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a board member or member of the public requested a particular item be removed from the consent calendar, in which case it will be considered separately under action items. Entertained.
Move to approve? Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the consent calendar. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Carries unanimously. Okay, item 2.1, pump zone charges. Manager Pearl.
Mr. President?
Yes.
We had a few people come in after we started. Did you just want to send out maybe a quick reminder of where the speaker slips are located in case anybody wants to speak?
Sure. If you want to speak, the forms are on a clipboard in the back corner over here. Please fill those out.
You can hand them to Diane right here.
Okay. Good evening, President Eltharp and members of the board. This item before you is about pump zone charges. This item was previously discussed by the board at the January 18th meeting. Subsequent to that meeting, we did send out some notices to affected residents. The board at the time had asked for some time to be driven into the process so that we can give those residents an opportunity to express their concerns, and that the concerns that we did receive kind of drove the meeting that we have tonight. So first of all, what is a pump zone? This is my definition. You won't find it anywhere, but basically it's a system, a water distribution system that receives and stores water through the use of a variety of equipment to provide water service to customers within a specified geographical area at a certain elevation above the valley floor. The district does have 10 pump zones. This map only shows 9. Partly that's because there are no residents in the 10th pump zone. So real quickly, I don't know how hard it is to see this, but I'll try to point out the area with the cursor here. The first pump zone is the North Twin Oaks area, kind of the northern central portion of the district. Deer Springs is over here along the freeway. Just above that is Coogan. Down in the southeast corner in the bottom right is Coronado Hills. Pump zone 5 is the Wolf pump zone up in the kind of central eastern portion of the district service area. Palos Vista is right kind of southwest of that. This purplish zone right here is the zone that has no residents. That's the High Point pump zone. In the lower left corner, a schoolhouse pump zone is in the kind of the entryway to San Alejo Hills from the west. Double Peak is above that in this area. And then the last pump zone is Meadowlark, which is in the very kind of southwest corner of the district's service area. So there's a lot of costs associated with operating pump zones. There's the initial construction cost of the pumps and the motors themselves. There's piping, there's storage tanks. There's the personnel required to operate and maintain those devices. We need to replace equipment eventually. And last, there's electricity required to power the pumps and motors that deliver the water to those higher elevations. So tonight, we're looking to the board for direction in basically 3 areas. And we'll talk about these in greater depth as I go forward with the presentation. But the first area is what percentage of pump zone costs are we trying to capture through pump zone charges? Secondly, how will those costs be spread across district customers? And last, when should those new charges be effective? So how do we allocate the costs? I would generally start with an overarching philosophy, and that's basically that the customers that receive the benefits of a service, pump zone charges, or pump zones in this case, should pay for that service. Customers at lower elevations may not need pump operations that service the higher elevations, but they may receive some benefits from having water stored at those higher elevations. And pumping water to customers at higher elevations obviously requires more electricity than pumping water to those residents at lower elevations, even though they may still require some pumping costs. And pump zones that serve a relatively small number of customers tend to have higher unit pumping costs because of fixed electricity charges, which is the charge you pay whether you use any electricity or not. So we made certain assumptions as we developed some of these alternatives that the board will see shortly. Firstly, we're only looking to recapture the electrical costs associated with pump zones. So we're not looking to capture the capital costs. We're not looking to recapture the staff costs for those. The only thing we're looking to recapture is the electrical costs. And going forward, the estimated electrical costs for all 9 active pump zones is about $413,000. So that's the amount we're trying to recapture. Currently, with the current rate structure, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, or the charge structure, we're not recapturing that full amount. So that $413,000 is not being captured. We're only capturing about 40% of that. So part of what we want to do is recapture 100% of that from the customers that benefit from the service, and then we need to make sure that those costs are allocated properly and fairly across that customer base. We're also trying to, from an operational perspective, we always try to pump at off-peak power times. So late at night, we try to pump the water, get it stored in the tank. When the power is cheap and when the power is more expensive, we just gravity feed the system that the tanks serve up there. The reason that's important is because going forward, SDG&E has proposed some changes to their rate structure, which may change the peaking times for pumping. So there are certain factors that are outside the district's control in terms of costs for pumping. Another assumption is that the total water pumped to the pump zones, to the 9 pump zones, is 911,000 units. Most people aren't familiar with units, but it's 100 cubic feet. Putting it in terms of acre feet, that's over 2,000 acre feet, or over 682 million gallons per year get pumped up to these pump zones, so that's a lot of water. So at the meeting on January 8th, we presented a methodology, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in depth, but we're looking at alternatives tonight. So you'll see real quick, there's going to be a chart that comes next, but before we look at that chart, I want to talk about what those alternatives are. The current charge is the baseline. So what people are being charged today is what you'll see in one of the columns as the baseline charge. And that, again, that's a charge that does not recapture all of our electricity costs. So then we looked at 5 alternatives after that and labeled them A through E. Alternative A is kind of a rather simple method, and what we do is look at all the pump zone electrical costs, that $413,000, and we spread that over all district customers regardless of what elevation they live at. There's some inherent unfairness in that because folks that who live at customers in lower elevations are now paying electrical costs that they don't need for them to enjoy their water services. Alternative B is somewhat similar in that we're taking all of the electrical costs and we're spreading them, but we're only spreading them over the pump zone customers. And I believe there's about 2,800 customers that are in pump zones, and they consume that 911,000 units. So if you took that $413,000, spread it over all the water being spread into pump zones evenly, that's what alternative B is. Alternative C, this is the methodology that was presented to the board at the January 18th meeting. And what that did was look pump zone by pump zone. So we would look at one pump zone, treat it by itself. We would look at the electrical costs for that pump zone, and the pumps in any zone have their own meters, so we know exactly what we're paying for electricity in that zone. We also have meters that measure how much water gets delivered in that zone. So we know how much it costs, we know how many units, and you can do simple division, divide the cost by the number of units, and that'll give you a cost per unit, which is what we're trying to recapture. That results in a wide disparity in pump zone charges amongst the pump zones. And some zones were hit harder than others. And when we sent those letters out subsequent to the January 18th meeting, we heard primarily from the folks in the pump zones that got hit the hardest through that methodology. Alternative D is kind of a change on alternative C. And what we're doing, we're taking all the pump zone electrical costs. So again, it's that $413,000. And we're spreading it over all the pump zone customers only, but we're taking a further step and looking at the elevation. So each of the pump zones has a different elevation, so it has a varying degree of electrical costs that come in there. And when you factor in not just how much water is sent there and how many customers there are, but at what elevation they're at, that's what alternative D does. Alternative E is very similar to alternative D, the same methodology, but what it also assumes is that maybe some of the lower lying properties and customers actually benefit from having water stored at higher elevations in the event that anything happened and lower level water supplies were unavailable for whatever reason. We could draw water from the water stored or from the reservoirs at higher elevations in the service area. So now we'll go to the chart and actually come to the numbers. So these are the alternatives we looked at, and I'll try to walk everybody through the chart because I know it's a lot of information. The first column just lists the 9 pump zones by name. The next column says number of customers. That's how many customers of record there are in each of those zones. The next column is the current charge per unit. That's what people see on their bills today. And as a reminder, this is not recapturing the entire electricity charge that the district is trying to recapture. And I'll pause there for a second and just point out that if we were to change the rates and recapture 100% of that power cost, the $413,000, that's not any new money to the district. The portion, the 60% that we don't recapture through pump zone charges are being picked up by the rest of the customers in the service area. So that money's coming to the district. It's just coming from people that aren't necessarily getting any benefit from the service that's being provided. So alternative A, this is the flat cost, and maybe I'll go into some depth there. So remember, alternative A is taking the $413,000 and spreading it over the 22,000 district customers. If you did that, it would cost about 7 cents per unit of water on everybody's bill. So whether you lived in the highest elevation or the lowest elevation, you would be charged 7 cents for every unit to pump water around the district. Alternative B is the cost per pump zone customer. So again, alternative B, as a reminder, we took the $413,000 and just spread it over the 2,800 roughly number of customers in pump zones and the amount of water that they consume. So that would mean that customers in the pump zones would be charged 45 cents per unit of water pumped, again, regardless of whether they're at the highest pump zone or the lowest pump zone. And again, this would only affect customers in pump zones. Alternative C, this is what was presented at the January 18th meeting. And again, this is just looking within a pump zone, how much water and how much cost of electricity was consumed. This is the information that was provided to the customers. We sent out 2,800 letters basically informing people of the new proposed charges, giving them time to come and interact with the board. and this is kind of what drove today's meeting. And you'll see in alternative C, in that column, there's quite a variety of charges. So the lowest, you have 12 cents per unit in the schoolhouse pump zone, and you have $1.24 in the Coronado Hills pump zone. So it's a factor of 10 difference between different pump zones.
Excuse me. I just want to clarify and see, then you took the total cost per each pump zone and divided it by the number of customers in each pump zone.
Well, we actually divided by the amount of water that was delivered to those
The
customers
amount of water
in that
that was
pump zone.
delivered to the customer, but
Yeah.
it's the customers only in that zone.
Only in that pump zone.
Okay.
So we looked at the total electrical bill for that zone, the total amount of water delivered to the customers in that zone, and did the math, and it comes out to a certain number of cents per unit of water for
Okay.
those customers in that zone.
Just
Right.
want to be sure. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Alternative D, and I call it the weighted lift volume approach. This factors in the elevation to which the water needs to get lifted. So it's a little different than alternative B in that it's not spread evenly, and it tries to account for the fact that even if you're in a pump zone, people at a higher elevation incur more costs than people at a lower elevation. This had the effect of kind of smoothing those costs. You'll notice that the highs aren't as high, the lows tend to be not as low, so you don't get the peaking. But I wouldn't say it's uniform. It's not like alternative B, which is uniform across all pump zone customers. So the lowest pump zone rate or charge in alternative D is MEADOWLARK at 11 cents, and I believe the highest is in Double Peak, which is at 62 cents per unit. In the last column, alternative E, it's again the weighted lift volume approach, but it assumes that 10% of the electricity costs get picked up by customers not solely benefiting being in a pump zone. So you take 10% of that electrical cost, so 10% of the $413,000, that other $40,000 is now being spread over a bigger customer base. But the pump zone customers do pick up 90% of those costs, depending on where they are, what elevation they're at. So basically, E is very similar to D in that it's just 90% of the costs of E. I'm sorry, E is 90% of the costs of column or alternative D. So again, there's not as much variety or variability as there is in some of the other alternatives, and other customers not benefiting from the pump are paying some of those costs. So I'll pause there and see if any of the directors has any questions. Yes, sir.
Would you explain further the benefit that the 10%, the reduction, or that the lower elevation folks would get from the pumping to the higher elevation?
Sure, I'll try to do that. So if something were to happen, and recently we just went through a water authority aqueduct shutdown, the desal plant was down. We have some storage in the upper tanks, the Twin Oaks Valley tanks, that service a lot of the lower pressure zones. But if something were to happen to that, whether there was some questions about water quality or the pipes that come out of those reservoirs didn't operate, and if we had a shortage of water in the lower level zones, we do have the ability with our system to take water that's stored up at higher elevations and let it gravity flow back and deliver water into an area that may not otherwise be able to obtain water.
A bit of an insurance policy.
Yeah, in a way. So they stored the water and it can be drawn on in the future. Now, obviously, it's a small amount, relatively small amount of water, and that's why there's not a large amount of benefit.
Mhm.
We estimated about a 10% benefit that would be appropriate.
Very good.
So, any other questions?
This is affecting 2,800 of our customers. Out of what's our customer base?
Approximately 22,000 customers.
So 20,000?
To 22,000, yeah, a little over
Total.
total.
So between 19 and 20,000, right now, today, are subsidizing that cost.
It can be viewed that way, correct?
How else would you view it?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I've got a kind of a follow-on question to that. You said the total electricity expense for the pump zones is about $413,000.
Correct.
Do you know the magnitude of the other O&M costs to provide pumping in the 10 pump zones?
Yeah, I really don't, but it's a large amount when you start looking at the capital investment that was put into constructing those facilities. and then having to replace those facilities and the
Well,
staff
I'm just
costs,
talking about,
like staff costs.
yes, staff, materials, and labor just to maintain those pumps on an
Yeah.
annual basis.
I don't know if we have a number. I'll look to, yeah, we don't have anything handy. I'd hate to guess at something like that.
Well, I just want to point out that regardless of what we do, we're still, the non-pump zone customers will still subsidize that cost regardless of this discussion tonight.
Correct, because none of these methodologies attempts to pick up any costs other than the electricity costs.
Right. Thank you.
But
You'll have the opportunity.
You'll have a chance.
You can, but you gotta fill out a form.
Burgerson.
Glenn, I'm struggling a little bit with, the customers who don't live in a pump zone. I don't live in one of those 9 pump zones, for example, but I suspect that my water before it gets to my house is pumped to some tank, some temporary holding tank, a reservoir. So is it really accurate to say that there's no benefit to the folks, there's no pumping benefit to the folks who don't live in those zones?
I think there's some benefit, and that's what Alternative E was trying to show, that there may be some benefit. One thing, and when we get to my recommendations later, I think that since we're not trying to capture all the costs associated with it, it's probably fair to say that the pump zone customers should pick up 100% of their electricity costs because they're being subsidized, to use the word, by other customers. So they may not capture all their costs in one area, but they probably should capture 100% of this particular cost for this.
And Glenn, I know that since you've been here and your new general manager's been here 4 months, 5 months?
3.5.
But since you've been here, we've been looking at all the nook and crannies to save money, as well as nook and crannies looking at our true costs. Now, I've been here 4.5 years, and this has never been presented to us before. If it has, it's been disguised as something else, because looking back, I can't find it either. So it's been passed through in a way that you weren't here for. But my question is, this is such a big leap. Why? Why is it such a big leap? When was the last time this was done and these studies were done? You don't know that, but maybe it's
Yeah, and I certainly don't know all the history, and I can't speak to how the existing pump zone charges were put together, but the board did ask staff to look and come forward with recommendations on the pump zone, on what the pump zone charges should be.
And nevertheless, and I appreciate that, but do you have staff here that has been here that could explain why we have such a massive jump and it hasn't been progressive?
There's staff here, and I don't know if they're prepared to give the entire history. So that's not what we were prepared to
I
do
mean, I
tonight.
don't want to call it what I would call it normally until I heard from someone that could explain why this big jump comes right now. And we've never seen this before, in at least the 4.5 years I've been here.
Yeah. So one of the things we'll talk about, if you remember, the third thing we're looking for direction on has to do with the timing. So part of it is what should the rates be, and the second is how long should we take to phase those rates into the appropriate. I do have some recommendations here, but certainly would like to hear from the board as to what they feel is the appropriate sequence or timing of the charge increase.
I'm not an authority on this, but I do know in the last 4 years of my time on the board that at one point, staff has presented the pump charge zones to us, and they were looked at on an annual basis. But I believe it was in 2015 or so, we decided, before that, there'd been a lot of volatility with this water. If you remember, electrical, San Diego would go up and down and up and down and up and down, and the peak timings changed. So what the board did at that time was, instead of hitting you as the customers every single 2 or 3 months with a change, we went for a process of trying to level it out. And unfortunately, in doing that, we didn't come back as a board on a regular basis and continued to compensate for it. So I know we've talked about this before, but I don't believe we've discussed it as thoroughly as this, and I really appreciate the effort that's gone into this report, and I hope the audience is able to understand all of that because it's quite complicated. But I think originally the plan was, and it might even have been before Director Martin and I were on board, that they decided to level it out by only passing through a portion at a time, which probably at that time was a good idea, but was no longer efficient. So
Thank you.
I wish.
Director Snow.
Yeah, just to follow up to Director Martin's comments, because I think he's onto something. I'll use the schoolhouse Zone 7 as an example, but we were at 1 cent back in 2015, and under the current proposal, you're looking at 12 cents, so it's a 1,200% increase. I do think that as we go through this, we should try to do some sort of analysis as to why was it only 1 cent back in 2015? Was that a wrong number in 2015? Because it's very difficult as a policymaker to look at this today and say, I recognize we're not capturing our costs with electricity. I get that part of it, but why weren't we capturing it in 2015 and before that? And because all of us have been here for roughly 4 years or less, I'd like to know some more of that history, because I think we're putting on some, what I would consider some unreasonable percentage increases. I know with some of these they may come out to $1 a month for the average customer. They may come out a little bit higher for some, but that from a percentage standpoint is so significant that I would like to know a little bit more of that background and why it was so low in the first place.
Any other questions? Okay, go ahead.
Just my question, do I assume prior to 2015, this was spread to everyone?
No, I don't believe, so. I believe there's always been a pump zone charge for the pump zone
Okay.
customers.
Okay, then my question would be the same as Mr. Sinella's was. In a year and a half or 2 years maximum, this is the beginning of 2017, to go up that kind of percentage would be ridiculous. So if something wasn't done in 2015, and I was here then, but I don't remember ever discussing it, ever.
All right, thank you. I think at this time we'll
Well, I
take.
still have a little bit more.
Oh, you do, I'm sorry.
presentation, yeah. So the last thing I want to talk about is the timing of the charges. So would like a board direction on when the charges should become effective, and should the charges be phased over time? So just because they become effective at a certain time, you could just do a portion of it at one date, and then after some period of time, you could phase in the remainder of it to kind of reduce the rate shock, for lack of a better phrase. And then how many phases and how long between phases would be important guidance from the board.
I do have a question relative to that. Do we see this increase on an annual increase from SDG&E, or is it monthly changing as we continue through?
So we look at this from an annual basis. We look
Right.
at the annual electricity costs, we look at the annual amount of water that will be pumped, and we come up with what we think is a good average rate per unit pumped for the period of that year. And then when we go to the next year's analysis, we would do the same thing. If power rates were gonna go up by, say, 5% from SDG&E, we would look at the new power costs, the new estimated amount of water that would be delivered, and we would come up with a new pump zone charge. Okay, so again, the direction being requested by the board tonight is what percentage of pump zone costs are we trying to capture through pump zone charges? For example, do we want to recapture 100% of that $413,000 only from the pump zone customers? Or is it a portion of that $413,000 in estimated electricity? Should that be picked up by lower lying non-pump zone customers? Second, how will those costs be spread across the district customers, and when should the new charges be effective? I do have some recommendations. So my recommendation is that we do collect 100% of the pump zone electrical costs through the pump zone charges. And again, the fact that the pump zone customers aren't picking up any of the capital costs, any of the staffing costs, any of the other costs that are associated with replacement of equipment, it seems fair that they would pick up 100% of one of those 5 cost elements that we have. My second recommendation is that we allocate the costs to the pump zone customers based on the weighted lift volume approach, which was alternative D. So again, alternative D was the pump zone customers pick up 100%, and it's a portion based on what elevation you're at within the pump zone you're at. And my last recommendation from a timing perspective would be to implement 1/2 of the change effective, I'd say almost immediately, but starting with the April 1st billing, and the remaining half would be effective at the same time as new wastewater rates and water ready-to-serve rates take place, which we think will be September 1st. But if that's delayed, then the second half would also be delayed. But certainly, these are just recommendations. If the board felt that a longer phase-in or a more multi-phased approach phase-in is appropriate, then that's certainly information we'd like to hear. And then I'll just leave this up here. These are the three areas of direction that we're requesting. And with that, I'm about done with my presentation.
Thank you. I think at this time, we'll go ahead and take public comment, and then we'll have time to discuss this afterwards. Our first speaker, Chuck Higbee.
We have the chart up there and the speakers are speaking.
Sure.
Would you like the table?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That'd be helpful.
Put that chart up there so that it's there. Thank you.
My name is Chuck Higbee, and I live in Coronado Hills, and it's my first meeting, so I hope I'm sorry. Right. My name is Chuck Higbee. I live in Coronado Hills. This is my first meeting. I've never been to one of these before, but I had first of all, I'm opposed to such a dramatic change so quickly. As far as the gentleman mentioned, the fixed charges, which zones have fixed charges? And with the drought still being in existence, as far as I know, there should have been less water being pumped, therefore less electricity being used. Were you guys saving the excess to, to kind of offset these exorbitant rate increases in the amount of money? Because you're obviously not pumping as much water because a lot of people are saving water, and my wife and I are a couple that saves a lot of water. So anyway, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Quick question, Sam, if I may?
Sure.
When were these units calculated for this study tonight?
Look at, when were the units calculated? The 911,000 units of water that were
When were they
proposing pumped?
calculated, from what date to what date?
The official was December 31st was the last time it was calculated.
Of last
A
year?
year's worth, and it projected forward 6
Calendar year,
months.
the calendar year.
So last calendar year? So that includes during the drought?
And I would add, to respond to the speaker's comment about pumping less water, when you pump less water, that's true, your overall electricity bill goes down, but you're also pumping less units, and you do have certain fixed electricity charges that you're spreading over a lesser number of units. So when we pump less water, it actually costs more per unit that you pump. So the per unit rate will go up. The total amount of dollars may go down, but the per unit actually increases with lower volumes.
All right.
Well, if I may try to clarify, if we look at either a power or a water bill, there's a certain fixed charge that you're paying whether you get a drop of water or a kilowatt of power. So as you use less and less, if you get down to zero, you may still be paying $30 or $40 of a flat fee just to have access to the service. So your amount of money per unit of whatever actually goes up. When you use more, that fixed charge gets kind of amortized over the greater number of units that you have. So the per unit cost decreases as your quantities increase. So if you took no drops of water at your house, you're still going to get a water bill, even though you got nothing, because of the staff it takes.
So corollary to what you're saying is we shouldn't conserve. Let's let those unit costs drop by using more water.
It'll cost you more money in the long run, but your per unit may go down.
All right, let's have our next, we got a lot of speakers to get through, so our next speaker is Ronald Ketchum.
My name's Ronald Ketchum. I also live in the Coronado Hills. I think that's where you're going to find most of the speaker, because the jump was over 2,000%, and that's ridiculous. I mean, there's San Diego Gas and Electric cannot jump your electricity by 2,000% because they're controlled by the consumer CPU. Anyway, so. CUP, sorry, PUC. These charges that you're trying to put on here are in addition to charges that you increased of just the water for this year. So he was saying that the non-pump zone people pay the same for the water as we do, which is the basic water rate per unit, but now they're adding, it's hard for me to believe there's $317,000 or $413,000 just to run the pumps. And that's the only charges you have for the whole water district for electricity? I mean, how much does the whole district use? I mean,
Well, it's just in the pump zone.
Yeah, so the $413,000 is electricity costs just for those pump zones.
Okay.
Certainly, the district has other electricity costs that benefit the entire district.
right.
It's like bringing water in to begin with and running the lights in this facility, things like that. Those are not included in that $413,000.
But we're paying those in the regular cost of water. There's a cost of goods sold that you guys have to calculate. I mean, that's a business thing. You pay so much for the water, you pay so much to get it here, you pay for filtering it and checking it and all your employees and the lights and whatever, and that's the cost of goods. So now you're gonna make a profit, which you've done very well for the last 5 years, $5 million on a year profit. That's you showed in your transparency budget. That seems that you haven't taken that $5 million and allocated it properly to forestall this mess that we're seeing right now today. I mean, for you to come up and say we're going to charge you over 2,000% more for your water this year, I think is not acceptable. So,
Thank you.
Can we just verify that I was with Ronald on his business terms with cost of goods, but also another business term is profit, and we're not a business. And I just want to be clear that I agree with you on your concerns, but we didn't make $5 million in profit. We may have put $5 million away in our reserves, but it is healthy for any government agency to have some level of reserve should something catastrophic happen that we're able to fix. A major earthquake, for example, we were able to spend $30 or $40 million readily if we have that available versus having to go out and get some sort of emergency loan or something like that. So it's not really profit.
And just to elaborate, so that you understand, we did not raise water rates last year. We in fact took $2 million of that reserve and put it across so we didn't have to raise water rates. So that's the reserve that Director Sinella is talking about. So we are trying desperately to be fair and equitable, but in this case, we're spending more money pumping the water up to those higher elevations, and we have to capture it some way. So just to clear that up.
If I may. And Mr., it was Ketchum?
yes.
This is just in direct to what your comment about the electrical. I believe the 413,000 was how much money all the pump zones used in 1 year. Is that correct? Well, according to the warrants or the receipts this month alone that we're talking about from February, is this total the top 10 vendors for this year? How much would that be?
Our total power costs last year were $1.1 million.
$1.1 million. So when you can see this whole big picture, which is so difficult to do, because I'm like you, we're all struggling with this incredible increase. But we are trying very hard, as both the other directors have pointed out, to pull out what exactly is the cost to get the water to you. And that's why we're dealing with it this way. Because you're right, all the rest of us paid the 1 million plus. I hope that helped.
Can you tell me how many pumps that is that we're dealing with?
How many pumps? I'll let staff answer that one.
You call out questions.
Director Martin.
One other thing I'd like to add, and when it's your turn, sir, you can come up and ask the question. We're a public group. The five of us have been elected by you to serve you. This is not a private corporation. We don't work for a profit. We work to maintain and to put aside enough money for contingencies that will come up. You hear every once in a while, we have a pipe explode under the ground. Happens. It has to be fixed. So the money that you see as set-aside money, you seem to think it's a profit. It's not a profit. It's already spent. We have a secondary sewer line that's gonna have to go out to Encina sometime soon, next 5 or 10 years. That costs a lot of money. So some of that money goes into that. So understand we don't work for a profit. We get a stipend, we're not paid employees. We're your neighbors. We live in the same pump zones that you do, except I don't think anyone here lives in Coronado Hills, which is the hardest one hit. See, you should have a member. No, it's the hardest one hit because it's the highest elevation and the fewest amount of people live there. Where you have some of the pump zones where there's a lot of people and it really cuts down your costs. So I just want you to understand, we're here to listen to you and understand, and we're trying to educate as to why it's happening, so you know why, but it's not for anyone to make a profit. It costs what it costs. And we're just trying to be more honest and open. You're gonna hear me ask a lot more questions to staff about how we got here, because that's what I really wanna know, because you're right, your increase is astronomical in Coronado Hills. Unbelievable. So, that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Dave Agena.
Hi, and thank you for letting us have an opportunity to talk about this. This is new for me as well. But Hal, you mentioned it, I agree with you, that the managers and directors are fiduciaries. And you're there to preserve and protect and maybe even expand the resources that you are managing. The rhetorical question I have is, do you ever do any 5 or 10-year planning, and or do you do any generational planning? Because obviously, I want to know, when did you finally realize that you had to raise the rates this amount? Was it suddenly overnight, last week, 2 months ago, 3 months ago? Or did you see it in some sort of planning guide that this was kind of predictable, this was coming, we're going to hold off doing something until we really have to? So it begs the question, as a fiduciary, are you doing the proper amount of planning so that we can anticipate these changes? The second part of this is, I'm sure you're all familiar with the term redlining. Me being in lending and very much aware that you can't charge people more money if they're in one property location rather than another, even though something costs more than others because of default rates. So it's illegal as determined by state and federal law. It seems to me that saying that the lower population doesn't benefit from the high population is kind of like saying, well, if you cut San Marcos in half, that group doesn't contribute to San Marcos anymore. Actually, there's a lot of residual spillover in commercial revenue that all of us contribute to make the capacity of the water supply even larger. So if you want to deal with less, that's fine. We'll get a different water board. We're not. They're a different district. You have a monopoly, and I would think that that monopoly covers a district, and in that district, everybody would be charged the same amount of money. In that, some benefit more, some benefit less, but there's also the spillover and residual, opportunity to get money commercially here and elsewhere. But the planning really does bother me, is how this came as such a big surprise to me and to any of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Karen Higbee.
Hi, my name is Karen Higbee. You get a double dose of the Higbee family today.
Great.
I wish to let the board know that I'm really opposed to this rate hike, especially for those of us who live in the so-called pump zone. From my viewpoint, I've been disappointed in our water company because it was said to have been negligent maintaining the fire hydrants in our area of Coronado Hills, and that was a great cost to some of the people who lived up there. It was really heartbreaking. And then as a result of that, the folks up there were hit with fire protection agencies that decided that they should pay more because they lived where they lived, up on the hill. And then those folks also endured the hardship of their insurance companies dropping them overnight or absorbently hiking up their insurance rates because of where they lived. And now you want me to pay more for my water because of where I live. I kind of feel like enough's enough. If, you know, and as the gentleman before me said, that it's the responsibility for those of us who oversee our needs as a community to plan ahead. And as Mr. Sinella said, you guys plan for a certain budget that if you had a catastrophe, you're well planned for. Well, likewise, you should have been planning to build more, I don't know, what do you call them, pump stations, or said to the city of San Marcos building department, hey, stop building all these houses down here in the valley. We don't have the infrastructure to deal with that. But I look all around me and I see buildings going up everywhere. So I feel that in order to fairly represent all of your customers, if you have to have additional costs, which I don't understand, but if you do, I do believe that you should share that cost with all of your customers because everyone would benefit from it. You shouldn't just select people and say, these people get more services than others. It balances out in the long run. So if funds are needed, I think it belongs to a shared population, not just the folks who live in particular areas or pump zones. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm glad you brought up the fire hydrant issue because we've heard it before. We supply the water to the fire hydrant. The maintenance, the operation of the fire hydrants is the fire department. We have no control over them other than if they call us out to do something relative to the valve that goes to the fire hydrant. So any of that took place in Coronado Hills with the fire hydrant, we have no ability to take care of that.
I beg to differ.
Well, you may.
Because those weren't fire hydrants in the first place. They were a pipe that came up the curb like that, and after that fire was over, even though the water company said they didn't have any responsibility, they were out in Coronado Hills within 30 days putting in fire hydrants in Coronado Hills.
Well, and I can certainly ask our operations director to explain that, but it's my understanding those curved pipes are blow-offs. And so perhaps Ed can explain that portion to the public.
Yes, Director Hernandez, the fire hydrants are up there commonly called wharf-fed fire hydrants. You find them along piers and wharfs, that's why they're called that way. They were actually operational. What the fire department told us, they did not use them because it's a wildland fire. They never hook up to them in a wildland fire because they have to evacuate immediately. So that all came out during the lawsuit that happened. We replaced them and we shared the cost with the county as a community effort. So that was why we did it. It was just to help out the community. And it's actually Elfin Forest.
At the district's cost.
Half of it was
half of it the district.
Yes.
And who maintains the fire hydrants after you've installed them?
It's actually Harmony Grove Fire Department, but now it's Rancho Santa Fe Fire is taking over that area.
Yes.
So they are now taking.
Okay, so the replacement of the fire hydrants was really just a desire on our part so that the fire department could hook into fire
Harmony
hydrants.
Grove is a volunteer fire department. They
Yes.
did not have the funds.
Yeah.
So we worked with the County of San Diego and we split the costs and we went ahead as community service. We put in brand new fire hydrants with pressure reducers so that we didn't have to have the wharf heads there. So that's why they look like normal fire hydrants now.
Very good.
But the upkeep is now the responsibility of the fire district.
Thank you.
If I may, just,
Did you have some?
No.
Director Evans.
before you add, and how many fire hydrants were replaced?
5 total for
5 total.
for the Harmony Grove Fire Department, 1 for the city of San Marcos, but they picked up the tab on that.
And those were paid for by everybody in the water district?
Correct.
Not singled out?
Correct.
Okay.
Came from general funds.
Okay, general funds, thank you.
Burgess, no.
I know this fire was a couple of years ago, but were we aware of that? I don't remember that being discussed as a board, the decision to do that, because why were we comfortable subsidizing
General
fire
Manager Lamb
hydrants?
did bring it up during one of the meetings, but I don't remember what the full discussion was. But we were approached by the county at the time, if you remember, it was in the press. quite a bit.
I remember the incident, I just don't remember that we agreed to split the cost with the county and thus subsidize, or the whole district subsidize fire hydrants for one particular area. And I'm glad from a life safety standpoint that we did that and fixed it, but it is a little bit ironic that today we're talking about the whole district subsidizing pump charges, and that's a big issue, but it was no problem subsidizing fire hydrants.
Yeah, that was a decision made by General Manager Lamb at the time, along with the county. So.
Interesting. Thank you.
Thanks, Ed.
Thanks, Ed.
Our next speaker is Greg Larson.
Good evening. My name is Greg Larson. I live in actually it's the Coogan district, I guess, one of 25. And I think, is that Division 1, Betty? Is that your division?
Well,
I think I voted for you is what I'm
Oh, I
going to say.
heard
And I think I voted for you because one of the
Did you
things that
see-
you, I think I voted for you because one of the things that I heard you say was that you were going to keep our costs down. I'm an avocado farmer. I've been an avocado farmer for 21 years. I'm probably the only avocado farmer here, I don't know.
Look at that. See? A lot of friends.
I'm trying damn hard to make a living. You say you guys work for nothing? I made $175 last year net. I'm a dumbass for trying to farm in the desert, right? That's what I was told by the previous director when I came in here and complained about costs of my water. You shouldn't be farming here. Doesn't matter what I wanted to do with my life, but I shouldn't be farming. So it's come down to the fact that my per unit cost is going to go from 15 cents to 92 cents per unit. I just grabbed 2014. Why? Because that's when you guys told me the next year I had to cut my production, I had to cut my use. So I grabbed that number. In that year I used 19,123 units. And that was way down from where I should have been. I should have been using about 40,000 units. I can't do it. Why can't I do it? Because of the cost of my water. Okay, now, you're gonna raise my rates on, what is it, alternative C to 92 cents, that's what I was told. First of all, I'm amazed that I was given this notice. And then yesterday I got a letter saying there was gonna be this meeting, but I'd never heard of any of this before. And I pretty much keep an eye on things, so I don't know if it was through, I'm supposed to watch the website. I don't get mail from you guys unless it's something particular like this. So when I see this chart, and I'm thinking to myself, it's the first time I've ever seen it. I'm not even 100% certain of what it means. 1330 HGL, I don't know what an HGL is. Can you help me out?
Yeah, it's a hydraulic grade line. It basically
Okay, all right.
indication of the elevation.
I'm gonna ask the question this gentleman tried to ask. How many pumps do we have in the pump zones?
I'm going to ask my operations manager to come up on that.
Just a quick,
You're actually in a pump zone that has 3 pumps.
how many total pumps are there in all the nine or 10 pump zones for the $413,000 cost?
Well, they're all different horsepower too. You actually.
How many pumps are there is all I'm asking.
I'd have to add it all up. You have 3 in Deer Springs, 3 in North Oaks, Coogan has 3, Coronado Hills has 3, Wolf has 3. Pile Swift has 4, Schoolhouse 3, Bell Creek 3, and Miller Hydro has 2.
So 3 to 4 per zone.
Okay.
So 30.
30-some.
430 horsepower motors. You have the highest lift that they can.
I know where I live. I know what it's like. I know where the tank is. I've been up there. Going back to some other gentleman's suggestion or question as to why there hasn't been some sort of forward thinking. I live across from the water, I guess it's a, pardon?
Water authority. San Diego County Water.
Yeah, the plant that they have out there. It's covered with solar panels, just covered with them. I gotta believe these pumps could be powered by solar. I mean, everybody's going solar. We're paying SDG&E. SDG&E is gouging me. They're gouging you, and you're gouging me because they're gouging you. I mean, I don't know, $413,000 might buy a pretty good-sized solar panel. I don't know, I'm not an engineer, I'm a farmer, I'm a dumb farmer, okay? But you're talking about the horsepower of these pumps. I've been around a lot of horsepower as a farmer. I used to drive over the road truck, 500 horsepower engines, okay? You can run them on solar. So just as a thought, passing the costs along to us, okay. I don't have a problem sharing in the costs. I got a problem looking at, I mean, I reduced my water usage so much last year that almost all of my trees died. And but for the fact that I've had 18 inches of rain since October, I'd be totally dead in the water. No pun intended. Okay, I would be out of business. I'm hoping that this year, I mean, right now, I'm harvesting the worst crop I've had in 22 years. The last 6 years have continually gone downhill because of the quality of the water that I use, which is so full of salt that if I don't leach the salt out or get a decent rain, I don't have a good crop. On top of that, the drought. Now, I know I'm whining, but I got a license to whine because I'm a farmer. So the point being this, that I cut my usage. I've been cutting my usage every year for 20 years. And I just get further and further behind. Now you're gonna add a $15,000 minimum to my bill. Okay, dumbass farmer, shouldn't be farming. Okay, but I'm willing to help share in the costs. I see alternative A, everybody adds 7 cents. I'm assuming that's what that means. You add another 7 cents. I gotta pay 92 cents. Somebody's gotta pay $1.24 in Coronado Hills. Now, and that's probably not commercial use. Okay, so they're probably not using, you know, the 19,000 units that I'm using. So I'm a little bit, I mean, I wish this thing would have been set up a long time ago so I had an opportunity to sit down and really study what my bills were, what some of Glenn is talking about, some of the horsepower issues, looking at the solar issues, so maybe I could bring some intelligence and some information to you. I appreciate very much that you're all sitting here. I do. You're working for us, and I appreciate that. You're not getting paid a lot of money. You know, you're doing a job that, I'm sure you all got secondary jobs, and I'm sure none of you are farmers. Or are you?
I used to be.
Are you a farmer, Betty?
I'm a farm girl.
But you're not a farmer now. You got smart.
Oh, a few tomatoes.
Okay, so on behalf of the farmers, I mean, I'm trying to grow food. There should be, I mean, we see these houses going up, and ever since the 80s, I moved to California in 1983. And ever since then, I thought, why doesn't the state implement a requirement that every new house have a gray water system for their landscape? So I can grow food and not pay for somebody's grass. I love a nice green lawn, but why am I paying for somebody's grass? Can't eat it. So, I don't know, I can ramble on, and I only am supposed to have 3 minutes. I'm sure I've used more than that.
That's okay.
I do appreciate your time. I do appreciate your efforts. I would appreciate it very much if you wouldn't rush into this as of April 1st. I would appreciate it if you would take some consideration and take a look at it. Obviously, I'm gonna vote for alternative A, because that's the cheapest for me. And I have no problem adding 7 cents.
It's not adding, you would reduce your cost in half. It would go to 7, it would go from 15 to 7 cents, just so you know.
Oh, well, then I'm more in favor of it. I heard him said it was gonna add 7 cents, so I guess I wasn't
That'd be the
listening.
new charge.
Okay. So,
But then we'd have 20,000 people in here next month.
well, you know, you take the 22,000 customers and you divide the 413,500 by
That's
22,000,
what-
so I think you
that's
get
what
about
that
80
is.
cents, right?
No, 7 cents. That's what-
7 cents, there you go. That's a pretty good deal, I think.
Yep.
Why am I? That's not rocket science, guys. It isn't. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Larson.
Glenn, could you give us a brief history of the state's agriculture discount that they used to supply to farmers?
So, I don't know, if Tom, can you handle that better? Or, I'm not sure the County Water Authority has a program that helps agricultural water users where they had a discounted rate, but they don't have the same reliability. So they're subject to first cutbacks.
I do have the discounted rate, but over the years, I have been, as soon as there's a drought, I'm the first guy who gets cut.
Right.
And the first time that happened to me, I had already cut my usage by 1/3 by cutting down 1,000 trees. And the next year, you guys put into effect a rate reduction, and instead of using my average for the last 10 years, you used the previous year where I already cut by 1/3, then you cut me another third. So I was cut 2/3 that year, and it happened again last year.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Elizabeth and Ali Domanian.
Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Elizabeth Bamanian, and my husband, Ali, and I have a small agricultural operation like this gentleman. I'm sure this is a lot larger than ours, but...
Elizabeth, would you speak
I'm
into the
sorry.
mirror? We apologize, the
Okay.
sound in this building is
All right.
pathetic, and for those of us that are deaf and can't see,
Okay. Let me start all over? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. My name is Elizabeth Bamanian, and my husband and I have a small agricultural operation up in Coronado Hills, and first of all, I want to say I agree with all the previous speakers. Very great comments, especially the last gentleman who was an avocado farmer. We are also avocado farmers. Probably have a lot smaller operation than the previous gentleman. But if this does go from 6 cents to, we are up in Coronado Hills, if this does go to 6 cents from 6 to $1.24, our average bill will go up over $1,200 a month. So that'll put us out of business, basically. And with all the development, all the house building, home building, all of what's going on, to be cutting down trees when we're putting oxygen in the air, we're putting food, we're growing food for everybody here. We sell to Costco. It just is ridiculous. So we're pretty heartbroken. We hope that we can come up with a different solution, one of these other alternatives. We're all for a reasonable increase and for everybody sharing it. But this jumping 200 times is not acceptable. And again, it will put us out of business. And my husband loves the trees, and we love what it does for the earth and the oxygen and our neighbors, and it puts good stuff in the air. So I would hope that we can come up with a different solution, and as other people say, slow down and really look at our alternatives to what this is. So.
Thank
Quick
you.
question, do you happen to know how many units a month you use?
1,000 units a month average.
I'm sorry,
1,000.
1,000 units a month?
1,000 units?
No. Are you sure that's 1,000 units? I mean,
I have it
Yeah.
all.
that's 750,000 gallons.
That's correct.
That's right?
Yes.
Okay.
Every tree requires 300 to 400 gallon a week, at a minimum.
So I guess we either don't eat or what else.
Thank you. Next speaker is Malcolm Matheson.
Hi there, I'm Malcolm Matheson. I'm a Pump Zone 5 Wolf pump customer. There's a whole whopping 12 of us who are primarily all agricultural customers. So when we see this very large increase of a pump zone, which is about a 75% increase for me, it's really going to put me out of business. I'm a large customer. I use well over 50,000 units per year. I manage my water properly and very efficiently. And I'm like with Gary Larson here regarding cutbacks, and our special water rate as an ag customer is not really a subsidized rate like people think we are as an agricultural customer. We have to give up something like we did this last year, such as when there's a drought, we were cut back substantially, which I just want to also let you know that I have been a VW Vallecitos Water District customer for over 15 years. I have a business plan. It's based on the planning and forecasting of my major inputs, such as water, which is my largest cost. And at no time in 15 years have I ever seen an increase such as this. proposed or discussed. It was just kind of like hit me as a brick wall 2 weeks ago when I got the letter. And in years past, I've had the fortunate pleasure to meet with Tom Scaglione, and we had discussed rate increases, pump zone charges, and we had the last pump zone increase, which was a major increase for us at the Wolf Tank. In fact, that they put in a new tank, new storage tank, which was much larger than the old existing tank, and we were able to pump water on off-peak period exclusively, which you'd think that would have a water rate, electrical rate decrease. In any event, I thank you for your time. I do represent a lot of customers of yours in the Twin Oaks Valley area that are agricultural avocado growers. And I also think that there is a benefit to all customers for the higher pump zones, water storage availability. So I think the water rate, the pump zone charges should be spread over all customers. Option A is my ideal rate increase would be great at 7 cents. At $3.02 for the basic water, the cheapest water rate, $3.08, a 7 cent increase is only a 2.2% increase. That's minimal for all customers. When your rates are going up 10, 15% per year, a 2% increase for all customers would be negligible.
Well, you'd be going down 50.
You would go 500%.
Yeah.
You'd be going down 500%.
That would be fantastic. Because my rate started off about a little over 5 years ago, our pump zone was about 27 cents. And it's gone up to 58 cents.
I understand.
Anyway.
Question? You said you had some meetings with Tom some years ago,
Yes.
talk about your rates. Do you remember what year that was?
Well, the last time was about 3 years ago when right after we put in the Wolf Tank, it was built, and we discussed the rate increase was quite dramatically, and I was like, really wondered why did it go up so much when we had a bigger tank and we were able to pump all that off-peak period.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Two things. First, I do remember when you inquired about that 3 years ago, and I believe at the time you felt you had come to some grips of understanding it. But what I want to point out to all of you in the audience, and what you're saying is great, and I want to hear it, but one of the things I think we missed in making clear is what this chart is showing you is in column A, that is not an increase. That is what it would cost, period. The same with B and C and D and E. Those are not increases, those are the actual costs. And I think it's confusing if you think we're going to add a 7%. That's why they were saying you're going to have a big drop from 58 to 7 if we chose A, and if everybody in the district felt happy to be paying for the water to go at different elevations versus B, C, D, or E.
So everybody's rate would go down except maybe to number 4 and number 7. Everybody's rate would be reduced.
Yeah, except for the other 19,000 people who are not represented here who would be going up 700%, just so you have all the information.
But 700.
Well, I don't know what that is,
Because they'd be going from 0 to 7.
It's 700%, but that's a 2% increase. That's nothing. When you're raising rates, let's say 10% per year.
2% from what?
From where it is now. If you look at the rate of, if the basic rate is $3.08, and if you raised it 7 cents to $3.15, that's a 2.2% increase. That's nothing. That's nothing. And so I just know that there's different pump zones. As you see, that there are several zones. We have 9 of them, or 10, and everybody must have different efficiency pumps. I mean, you'd think that you'd be able to pump at the same elevation with the exact same cost for the same amount of lift. Unfortunate for even me in my individual case is that I'm at the top of the hill and I don't get the benefit of having a much increased water pressure. My water pressure at the head pressure is only like 12 pounds. So I have to use extra electricity to pump downhill. So I don't get the benefit of having proper pressure at my head.
Understand?
Anyway, thank you for my time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And nobody's going to show up for the increase the next meeting.
Okay. If you think that, our next speaker is Brian Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. President. I too live on Coronado Hills. I have 2 lots, one I live in and one we have a small macadamia grove on. The one I live on is a zero landscape. It's a fairly new house. Mainly, Mr. Martin and I put in Cocos Road along with my neighbor years ago. You were on the board then. I do want to point out, at that time, you had staff lie to you in a council meeting. It was blatant. I called BS on it in the meeting. It does happen. I'm not accusing that, but just, you're our wolves. You're our sheepdogs. Keep them at bay. Let's not get cozy, okay? You've been here a long time. You were at San Marcos a long time. I don't want to see that again. The other one, clear up a couple things. The fire hydrants, yes, we do pay for them. We paid, my check was written to the water district, a large amount. My neighbor just got fleeced for one that the fire department's not going to use. They didn't use the one in Cocos Drive during the fires. They're not going to use his. And it's 300 feet from the other one. So enough of this. We're tired of getting fleeced. And this is another one. We're getting fleeced. We're tired of it. We're sick of it. Okay? The large lots do pay more for everyone down there in the valley on those minimum lots. And then you can see it in the charge on your water meter size. For a zero landscape lot, I had to put in a 1-inch meter just because I have 3 acres on that one house. Okay? Those little lots don't do that. They put in 5/8 meters, and the cost of that is half or 2/3. I'm sure your staff will go on it. Okay, so that's another one. The next time we have a fire, I'm sure when the power's out, all those fire trucks that are saving all those houses in the bottom in the big cities are going to love to have our water pressure that we've paid for over 10 or 20 years till the next fire. So a little 7 cents insurance policy doesn't seem outrageous to me when you address your 20,000 people that are going to show up in this room that seats 20. Okay? And then the last one is there's kind of 2 scenarios going on with this. One is the staff's pulling wool over your eyes or something. I did some back of the envelope calculations. I'll go head to head with your engineering staff. I've done it before. And to stick a hose in Jack's Pond and pump it up to that tank would cost me about 65 cents for a unit of water. Okay, how they're getting $1.24 for something similar to that, I don't get. It doesn't pass the smell test. And I will go toe-to-toe with any of your engineers. Mr. Hernandez, be happy to sit in a meeting anytime you like. Okay, so that one just doesn't pass the smell test. So there's scenario one. The second scenario is it was at best extremely poor communication to your customers. We get a letter and it says, since the last time we adjusted in July 1st, 2015, I don't know of anybody in this room in 2 years got a 2,000% raise like you're asking us to pay. That's at best. And also, keep pace with rising electricity. It's all electricity. I get my power bill. In fact, I don't have a power bill. I have solar, so I concur with that guy that somebody with access to long-term capital like the water district should not be even paying a damn electricity bill. But I get my power bill, and I ran my numbers against that. I've seen the rates in 2 years, they're not even close to this. So it doesn't pass the smell test. And I know you guys are expressing some of that, but I'm telling you, we're ticked about this. This is just another one, and you do this kind of stuff, and if they didn't send out that letter, none of us would be here. It'd just show up on the water bill, and there'll be a couple farmers are the only ones that would notice they'd be put out of business, and who cares about a couple farmers, right? And so hopefully and luckily, thank you for all of you showing up, that we're here, pissed off. Yeah, it doesn't sound like much, but this is out of line. And so with that, I'll see it any other time. Be happy to discuss with anybody.
Thank you. Mr. Go ahead.
The point I want to really heartily agree with you on is your board gave direction for that letter to be sent out. That wasn't staff's idea, that was our idea, because we knew there was going to be a lot of pushback, and we wanted you to come and talk to us. So
and we are.
That was something we said, no raises, you have 45 days to come and talk to us. So that's the reason why that happened.
Thank you for that.
Mike Hunsicker.
Mike Hunsaker, 115 Equestrian Court. I happen to be in the schoolhouse district. And I get every now and then transients and pressure going up to about over 125 PSI. Blows out my pressure regulator on at times. I'm not sure just how the 7 cents is calculated, and I'm not sure that it is totally accurate. One of the things is that we get our desalinized water up in the Twin Oaks area. We pay 0 wheeling charge, but we do pay for the desal water in that respect. We also use that, as I believe, and I'd like staff to elaborate, as to that's where we do a lot of our mixing with the MWD. So there's some sort of charge and credit should be done. And if anything, if that water comes downhill, we should have a turbine generating power like we have off of methane and gas in our wastewater treatment. I also want to emphasize that this is not the only increase these people are going to see. Most of these people are ag or the most efficient water users you have. And some of these are going to get a 13.6% increase in their water, their base water. These charges should be considered all together, and the efficiency of these people should be considered. Right now, the lowland apartment dwellers are using about 100 gallons per day per person. An average home in these regions is using about 83. When we had the drought restrictions, they were the ones who stepped up to the plate. All of this should be considered, and these charges should be considered as part of the overall water increases. Thank you.
Thank you.
A question, I got to hear this. Go ahead, Mike.
Mike, I just wanted to clarify too, just so you have all the information. The schoolhouse pump zone is in San Elijo Hills, not Twin Oaks. And I don't.
Not the old schoolhouse.
Not the old schoolhouse, no, the schoolhouse road. And looking at these, I don't think you're in any of these pump zones, just so you know. Unless you live in the very, very northern part of Twin Oaks, but I don't think you do. I think you live more centrally, yeah. Yeah, I think you're not in a pump zone. Just wanted to make sure, so you can sleep well at night.
Question. And General Manager, this is the first thing I've heard about 13% increase that is going to be coming everybody's way. Did I miss a meeting?
No, the board has not made any decisions on any future rate increases. I couldn't speak to what the speaker was talking about.
Yeah, so that just.
That's the finance committee.
The finance committee, Mr. Martin, Director Martin, you're on the finance committee.
I'm chair of the finance committee.
Are you charging me 13% more?
We haven't even dealt with that.
Thank you.
At all in any way, so I don't know what you're talking about. We haven't. There will be an increase. Last year, you did get a notice, a 218 notice from us, saying that your water was going to go up 5%, 5%, and 5%. That never happened, because when it came back to the board, we rejected it, well, the majority of us rejected it, and allowed for only a 5% wholesale charge, because we're getting desaled water, which is much more expensive, to try to stay the amount of money that we're spending out of our reserves to level that off. So that never happened. This year, we're going to be looking at that rate again and what it may be. And if it turns out to be 13.8% and someone got information outside of this board, heads are going to roll. So I don't know what's going on, but we haven't talked about any percentage whatsoever.
If I can add, if the reference is to the activities taking place at the Finance Committee meeting, the Finance Committee has been receiving updates on the rates, rate structure. The numbers, it's been caveated, say these numbers are not based on an approved budget. It's just talking more about a methodology. Those numbers have not been blessed by the board. That was just working information for the board to look at. They're hypothetical numbers to show how the rates may compare. So I think they're being taken out of context from that perspective.
Thank you. Our next speaker is, I think is it Rico?
Rico, that's me, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. I also live in Coronado Hills, and thank you for having this meeting. I want to make a couple of comments. There have been some really great presentations before me. But one of the things I want to say is that the word subsidy is not a bad word. It's very democratic. Cities subsidize farmers. The post office subsidizes everybody because it costs the same to send a letter to Escondido than it does to Fairbanks, Alaska. So there are some public benefits to subsidies. So you can hear that I am going to be arguing for a cost accounting that spreads the cost of these pumps across the entire district. That to me makes more sense because avocado farmers provide a benefit to the community. We pay more property taxes, so we pay for your schools. If you don't live up in Coronado Hills, your property taxes are lower. So it can be democratic when you look at this. That's just a comment I wanted you to hear. But what upset me most when I got this full 70-something page report is graph 1. It's on page 75. And when you look at this, what you can see is that revenues are basically flat or even declining 14%. But expenses have gone up 67% from fiscal year 11 up until fiscal year 16. So again, this is a recipe for continual annual increases unless you guys, you're not running for profit, but you need to cover your costs. So unless you get your hands around why these expenses are increasing, this is going to happen every year, right? And someone mentioned, why aren't you investing in solar? You're setting aside this capital money to improve service to your customers. That's one way you could do it. Because this graph is to me the most upsetting thing in this report. I just see every year that I'm living here, we're going to have a meeting like this. The other thing that I see in table 1 is I can't believe that your cost accounting was very accurate because Coronado Hills, the existing charge is 6 cents. The SDG&E calculating expense is $1.24, so there's a shortfall of $1.18. To go from 6 cents to $1.24, something's wrong there. It's like I can't believe that these cost accounting numbers are correct. And then in that same table, if you use your hydraulic grade lines, HGL, so Double Peak is at 1,530 HGL. Coronado Hills is about the same, 1,530. And yet the expense calculated by San Diego Electric is 24 cents compared to $1.24. Very similar hydraulic grade lines. So someone mentioned the smell test with these numbers. I'm very suspicious that these numbers are accurate now. That's all I wanted to say. But my bottom line is share the costs. It's democratic, and there are other benefits that you may not be aware of. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next is Catherine Cherney. I don't know if I said that right.
Thank you. My name is Catherine Chimerney. I live in Coronado Hills, towards the top of the hill in Pump Zone 4. I agree with all of the arguments already presented to you, but the reason I decided to come up and say something is I take exception to whoever it is saying that we're not picking up any of the capital costs. I personally paid for the repaving of the road that gets you up to the pump where I live. I did not receive help, despite having asked for it. I received a small contribution from Vallecitos after requesting a lot more based on what I observed to be the traffic component of your people going up there to take care of the pumps and the tank. So I have already paid a huge amount of money to support not only where I live, but how you get to where you're doing your business. And I don't appreciate being asked to pay this huge amount more.
Okay, go ahead.
Ed, could you explain that circumstance? I'm assuming we have an easement road of some type.
Yes, you do. I'm up there twice a day.
You're not Ed.
Yeah, Coronado Hills Tank is, if you go up Indian Ridge, Washingtonia, the roads to get up there. So the operators are up there checking the water quality in the tank and then adding any treatment if they need to. So the road is used for that. And as far as any payment, that probably went through claims, which is not my department, so I'm not aware of what the request was.
If we have an easement, and we have a driveway on that easement, don't we maintain that easement?
It's not our property. I don't, the easement is maintained enough on certain areas. It's across an easement.
Sir?
Yeah. But that's not something that I was privy to, so I'm not sure what was agreed to as far as the cost sharing on that road. But we do use that road.
Right, but you don't know about the cost sharing?
No, I wasn't aware of what was agreed upon for that.
Who would know that?
If it went through claims, it would be Jerome Janis.
And how often do you use that road?
They're up there probably 2 or 3 times a week at least, depending on summertime. It might be more for treatment.
Okay.
2 or 3 times a day.
Is there more than that? And you also use Atterbury?
Director Sinella, you got a comment?
Yeah, what year was this easement paved? When was it?
I don't know.
Was it in the last 5 years?
Customer.
Yes, it was.
How did we get to it before it was paved?
It's always had some pavement.
Had some pavement, some dirt, but we were getting to it anyways, right?
Yes.
Are we the sole users of this road?
No.
Is it open to the public?
I believe it's a private road. There are other facilities up on the top of the hill that are, they look like microwave antennas, some kind of antenna farm up top of the hill. I don't know which utility's using that.
Could I ask the general manager, and I know we can't get it tonight, but can I get a report? Can we, the board, get a report on exactly what she just brought up? Why is she paying for the easement? What percentage of share? How is that done? And I sort of assume Jerome's not here tonight, so he might not remember it anyhow, he has a lot, but.
Well, he handles all the claims, so then that goes through the general manager at that
Thank
point.
you.
But
Can we get a
I know
report back?
General Manager Prum was not here at that time.
Okay.
Contact your board lawyer and mention the word quantum Marriott. She'll know what you're talking about. She'll address it for you.
Please.
Anything else?
I think that's it. Thanks, Ed.
Sure.
Our last speaker is Charlie DeVal.
Charlie's already speaking.
Take a minute off.
I'm going to speak some more. My name is Charlie DeVal. I live in Coronado Hills. I'm a retired operator from the Encino Wastewater Facility. I also worked at the desal plant as a consultant, and I have a bit of experience in water treatment. And I know the San Diego Water Authority and Metropolitan are running up, they all run along thinking that they're entitled to everything they ask for. Last time I was here, you guys are asking for a 15% increase, and I came in here and asked, have you ever given your employees a 15% increase? Never. But yet you guys are asking for it. So I realized that, and I've worked with a lot of boards throughout North County, and I realized that you're asking for what the general manager's saying, hey, I need this for a budget, and I need that, to make the city run with the water district. I'm getting to the point where I'm questioning the management of this Vallecitos water districts. You guys are, the messenger. You're sitting there telling the public and getting the brunt of it on what needs to, to financially run the Vallecitos water district. But you really got to question the management styles. If you guys are going out and needing a 15% increase one year, and you get spanked down on that, and now you want a 2,000% increase on a pump zone, does anybody know how to use a calculator? You guys are ridiculous. I mean, and it starts with you, dude. You've got to learn. You got to learn what you're doing.
Yeah, he's only been
Charlie,
here for 3 months.
if I may say, the 15% increase.
The other guy's not
was
here.
asked for.
Just take it for what it's worth.
Was not given to
sorry,
us.
sorry you're sitting in that chair, but it goes with the job. So if you're not giving these guys good information, or maybe you should go through the office there and see how many people got their feet up on the desk. And go through and cut down and live within your means. I gotta live within my means. I'm retired. I only get so much check a month, and I have to live with it when everybody's going around wanting to increase this and increase that. Geez, you guys are a runaway train.
I have to take exception, sir, because we have decreased our staff over the last 6 years from where it was. And may I talk? You haven't had a chance. I want to redress your concern. We have reduced our staff. We have increased our connections. And there is no one in this district sitting around with their feet up on the desk, and our finance committee is delving into those numbers, and they are finding that we have been very lean and mean in our operation. So we're still looking at it.
Well, I'm
And-
speaking from 35 years of experience of working with
Yeah,
Vallecitos
I
Water
appreciate
District
that,
and
and
MEADOWLARK and all the other districts.
I
around it.
appreciate that, but we are doing our best to maintain our overhead and reduce it as we have with the
If you're asking
PERS.
for increases like this, you best take a look at it again.
Well, we're having to grapple with it. That's why we're here tonight. We're grappling
Yeah,
with this.
You know, and
We're not
I'm
just
trying to
blindly
come down
sending
on
it
you
out.
guys, but, I mean, everybody needs to tighten up. You know, I have to being on a fixed income. And everybody's wanting more money, and everybody's entitled. I need this. Well, you know, strap it down. I have to go out and live within my means. Go out and adjust your means.
Thank you. All right, that's all the public.
May I speak? I came in late. I
Oh,
don't know where the sign-up sheet was.
Come on up.
I just want to have my say.
That's okay. Just state your name if you.
Yes, my name is Paul
And
McClellan.
Before you can
Yes.
begin, when you're done, would you mind filling out a speaker's request?
I'm happy to do so.
Yeah, thank you very much.
My name is Paul McClellan, and I also live in Coronado Hills, and I've lived there for over 20 years. And I've listened to the comments here. I also was surprised by the letter. I am a realist. I recognize that people have to raise rates on just about everything. That's how the world works. But Mr. Hernandez said here tonight that he's very proud that you know, in 2016 there wasn't a rate increase. And Mr. Martin, you said how hard you fought to get rid of these 5% increases. But what good does it do anyone when the next year you turn around and do in excess of 2,000%? That's a usury percentage increase. It's unheard of in anything in my years of ever dealing with any business anywhere to have a 2,000% increase. So the question that I have yet to see answered by anyone here on the board is how the planning fell short. Where was the fault? Where was the dereliction of somebody's accounting? Where was the fault in the planning to be so proud that you didn't raise rates one year and turn around and raise them 2,000% the next year? That's not very smart. If I could get an answer in a letter tonight, in a week, I'd really appreciate that. I'd really like to understand that.
And we would too. And that's what was asked by Director Martin, because.
But we haven't had an answer yet.
We don't have an answer because they can't pull that out of their throat. They're gonna have to look at why this has taken all of us by surprise. I mean, when we heard this last month, and Director Martin, Director Snell, the rest of this board can attest to this, we were shocked. And that's why, for the first time, ladies and gentlemen, we sent a letter out to you and said, hey, are you as shocked as well as we are? And that's why you're here tonight.
I don't think there was anything about being shocked by that. We were all shocked, but that's not what the intent of, or the wording of the letter.
Well, no, that's because I'm a little bit verbose, but we were surprised at the size of this and how to grapple with it. So Director Martin is the one, I believe, that requested that we make sure that the public got this information, and this is why you're here this evening.
There was no empathy whatsoever in that letter. And Mr. Martin's empathy tonight, I wonder how much empathy there really is behind it.
Should you not have raised these questions prior to sending out the letter within your own organization?
Yes. This is where I'm wondering about the leadership. Where is it? Where's the explanation?
May I say something?
Go ahead, Director.
Okay. What I'm going to say is not going to be popular, but it's going to be the truth. The last time there was a raise and it was denied, we all knew, and those who voted against that raise knew, that we were putting the district in harm. Our staff did come to us and tell us we were already using our reserves, and we knew full well this was before Mr. Perum's time. But for political reasons and uncomfortable reasons and trying to make it look right, it was denied, or it was halved, or it was changed. The reason you don't have this is the pump zones have come forward, but there has not been a majority of the board willing to address it. Now, Charlie, is that your name?
Yes.
Now, this I want you to hear, because I think the last time we had a meeting like this, you left, and you talk about these increases. Well, I voted no on this board several years ago when the guys who call themselves the reformers gave themselves a 33.5 increase in per diem. They didn't tell you that. They didn't ask you how you felt about that. The only reason they're coming forward, and we're all coming forward now, is we have a new manager who's trying to bring this place back where it should have been and where it used to be. We're in the hole. You are behind $413,000, not just you, the district, for your pumps. And we have to figure out how we're gonna make that up. It doesn't matter necessarily how we got there, but that's what's in front of us. Do all of us jump in and do it? Do just the pump districts do it? But I want you to understand that sometimes what you hear is, like you said, is not the whole story. And I personally feel there is a lot of work that could be done, and one of them I would like to see us do is cut our per diem. Why pay us when we're not doing a really great job? At least not yet. And I feel that this needs a lot more work, and I appreciate you're here. I'm gonna say kudos to the board for sending out a letter for the first time for us to do that. But we're coming from the red.
We still need this explanation as to how you got to this point.
So.
By denying what the staff asked.
No, so we're talking, that, no. No, so,
Director Snow.
let me help clarify, because what that last couple of minutes was complete nonsense, and there was more non-truth in that than truth, for sure. Tonight, we are not talking about rate.
Which 2 minutes was that?
No, you were good. This last 2 minutes.
It's the truth.
No, it's absolutely not. We're not even talking about rate increases from the general rates tonight. We're talking about pumping charges. And the elephant in this room, and you're absolutely right, is why was it at 1 cent, 6 cents? Why was it so low and wrong, apparently, in the first place? And you're right. Nobody from staff has been able to come to us and say, we messed up, or we didn't calculate it right, or a prior board, because you gotta remember, with the exception of Director Hernandez, I think we're all right around our first term here. Was there a prior board that shot this down? But that's the elephant in the room, is the rates currently today are not correct. They're not enough to cover the charges, the $413,000. We're not short for $413,000. We're short the difference between what we're recovering from you and the total $413,000. So what we have to determine today is, how do we close that gap? Do we spread the cost to all of the customers, all 22,000 customers, or do we find some way to find some sort of common ground in the middle somewhere? And I'm one of 5, so I have my own opinions on that, so I can't just dictate that. But I want to be clear that everything you just heard was just complete nonsense, and it's completely irrelevant to what we're talking about today, and it isn't going to help the situation.
But did it not occur to someone that 2,000% at least was not really a very smart, from an accounting point of view, or a fiduciary point of view, however you want to do it? Who raises rates 2,000%?
Those concerns were brought up at the board meeting that ended up with sending you out a letter. Staff is telling us one thing, and we need to hear from you. You're our employers. We need to hear from you. We're hearing from you, and we appreciate it. But yeah, I have to admit that what you just heard about that diatribe about water rates we stopped. We never heard these rates before. These are new to me in 4 years. And how does it go up 2,000%?
But the letter did not.
We're asking staff, and staff is stonewalling.
The letter did not ask for anyone's input. So even to the point of the letter.
We were going to get it. We didn't say come to the meeting. I mean, that's
even to the point of the first letter of making us acknowledge, There was nothing like, oh, we're shocked, we were proposing this, this is what's going to happen very quickly. So even your delivery was very unprofessional, in my opinion.
I would agree with that too.
Thank you.
I had a question of staff. Is that all the speakers?
That's all the speakers.
Glenn, none of your options here, and as we've been going through this, I've kind of been thinking in my head, if we left the pump charges as they are today for the folks that are in here, for all of these pump zones, and we left them at the exact same amount, we didn't decrease them, we didn't increase them, what would be left over if we spread the remaining difference in cost to the rest of the customers? What would that cent be? I know that you're probably not going to be able to just.
So you're saying we're currently collecting about 40%, so the amount that we're not collecting is about $240,000 that we're shy on pump zone charges. So that $240,000, and that's per year, is getting spread over those other 20,000 customers.
It's already happening.
And it's already happening, and I tried to address that earlier. This isn't new money we're asking for. It's money that's being collected, but it's being apportioned to people that aren't benefiting from the service directly.
Well, okay, but I guess, but if we were to increase add a pump charge that doesn't exist today to the other 19,000 customers for that 240,000 you said difference, that would be roughly 3.5 cents? If you just kind of cut it in half, I mean, just ballpark?
Yeah, probably in that range. I always hate to guess at numbers on the fly like this.
I know we're doing math here on the fly,
yeah.
but, okay. So, that could be one, again, trying to find a solution to all of this, that could be one that we could consider as well that's not presented by staff, where we don't impact them positively or negatively, and we also mitigate some of the impact to the rest of the festival.
And the options that are in front of the board are just that. There's some ideas, some thoughts based on feedback we got. And although several speakers and the board members have said it, I want to make sure we acknowledge the board for their efforts in this. It was directly through the board's request and the president that we placed this item on the agenda today to discuss this, because we knew that there were some concerns by the ratepayers. So I think this is a good start to a dialogue to try to come to a solution that's acceptable to all.
But if it was an administrative shortfall, shouldn't everybody have to try to pay for it instead of, again, redlining it?
Yes, they should.
Are we going to get notice when you guys finally decide what you're going to do? So we can talk about it again?
Well,
Action items and what's the takeaway?
right now, we're going to take a 10-minute break because we've been at this pretty long, so we'll reconvene in 10 minutes.
Oh, my gosh. Good job.
You got my package? Yeah, and that little note on the top.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Going to those lights for the traffic cam. And then I think I read somewhere on the internet that they're unconstitutional or something.
Yeah.
So can I go to the judge and say, is this unconstitutional?
No, it's, you got.
Well, that's the other thing.
We're not behind. What's happening right now is that. No, we're just changing, other people are paying for it.
Well,
that 409,000 is being paid for by all the customers. So I guess, if you look at it this way, it's kind of socialistic, but it's trying to bring it down to real things that people use and pay for it. Right now, everybody's paying for it.
They're supposed to calibrate those. Right. The lights are the same. And
No, I know. I'm trying to find some common ground. I'm not comfortable with these 1,900, whatever, 2,000% increases. So I'm trying to find some middle ground that we can all agree on.
Is that yellow line?
Okay.
Is 1 second
Thank
short.
you very much.
Go.
It's really hard though. It brings us back to a socialistic system. And I'm not a socialist personally. I mean, our school system is, a lot of our systems are, transportation is, water, if we charge everyone a flat rate, then some people are paying more than what they're actually using, because they're not using that. But I understand what you're saying too, especially with the amount of increase, which is astronomical. I think you're gonna get, who knows what's gonna happen tonight, but I think you get some relief. I don't know.
I'm sure there will be. Yeah. Well, we're gonna have to re-notice the customers.
Oh, yeah, but that means everybody pays 3 cents. The lowlanders as well as the highlanders.
No, I understand.
We pay more
understand.
property tax,
Yeah,
but
we're
your
trying to.
property's worth a lot more than the lowlanders.
I know.
I mean,
We're trying to
it's
come up
all-
with something that's.
I understand what you're saying,
Yeah.
especially the farmers. It's like, I understand the farming problem, but
No, I
the state's not
hear you.
helping.
That's a lot better. Yeah.
Do you expect the local citizenry to? I don't know the answer. They are, but a lot of people live in Coronado Hills are not, they're just, do you do agriculture at all? How many units do you use a month? How many units of water? Roughly? Oh, there you go, it's right on your bill, how many units you use? That's all you use? Well, 4 units to you would be an increase. $5
I don't
a
think
month.
so. I think we're at the point of asking for, final comments, potential
Screw this
motions.
up.
Maybe it's maybe an agreement on a combination of things that you have to come back. You guys are going to analyze it. It's something. It's not one of those choices. Yeah. There's so many permutations here.
No, I understand and I agree. I'm careful because of the legal side of it, but
just as a lowland customer, I don't particularly want to subsidize.
And we're just trying to
recognize
correct.
that there's some kind of
This
value.
2,000% increase taking place over 15 years. It's not something that, when we have one person trying to say she will about it, none of the rest of us did.
Line
How
item
did you know?
budget was about $530,000, and I think I'd asked you that before. Is that just zone pumping, or is there other pumping in there? I'm not sure.
I know, but I know.
I think you said you would have to check it a little bit, yeah. But I think it's on the order of 100 or a couple hundred.
It's Coronado Hills.
Like, that's kind of the element, and that's what the point was. The rest of us are paying a significant portion of it.
It's unbelievable.
That kind of got lost on everybody because they're so focused on the dollars and cents here.
Oh. Depends on where you're at.
Oh, yeah.
Whether you're up here or down here. Exactly, that's the way it always is. But thank you. Thank you.
We're gonna hash this out. Yeah, I'm sure we're gonna hash this out. We're gonna ask staff to give us some more information. And I'm not gonna be ready to make a decision this evening. So this will carry on, unless everybody else does, to another board meeting, because there's just too many questions that need to be delved into and answered for me personally. Yeah, oh yeah, we're gonna work this.
I was late, but
Well, here's, the problem, not the problem, well, the situation is, these come to us, it's not like we knew this was coming in months in advance. We got this last board meeting, we looked at it and we said, whoa, this is something we better send notice out to the community, and that's what we did immediately. Now, I didn't really look at the notice, but, you know, and I'm sure it was just a business letter. It wasn't, oh, gee, we're sorry, baby, that's not our job. We're just giving information, send it out, and then now we're getting input as to how this is affecting you and the other pump zones. And now that we know that, and we kind of had an idea, my God, this is a chunk of money here, and we were going to get not everybody coming to go, good idea. So we're going to go through it. And go ahead. Oh, yeah, that was, somebody's asked that question. Yes, we do a master plan, and
He just picked one. He's like, oh, this is the plan.
that one.
So,
Well, right, and there are various sizes of pumps. So, you know, a 10 horsepower pump versus a 400 horsepower pump uses obviously a lot more energy. So that's in the mix as well. But the discussion is not about the cost or the replacement or the maintenance of any of that pump. We're just talking about the charges, the electrical charges that SDG&E is placing on these zones above and beyond what we're already subsidized. So, I mean, that's important to get.
So we bring the water to the property line. Whoever's developing the house, if it's a developer or if it's a private, owner who's developing the house, is responsible for everything from the property line is. So like if you're like this regular subdivision, whoever like KB Home, they would be responsible for the actual bringing the line to the property line, then we would connect it. If it's the most suitable, I don't know the answer. You have to be so case by case for every house. I'm sure that there's some best practices that go into it because it makes sense, right?
We'll get there.
Okay, let's get back into session here.
All right, we're back.
We're moving on.
Yeah, the ones we can.
Do we need to close the public meeting on that, like they do at the city? I don't know that we've ever done that.
Not officially.
All right.
We've heard all the public comments, and so leave it to the board for discussion after hearing all that. What's the pleasure of the board? Director Sano.
So, the more and more I thought about my comments from right before we took a break, the more and more I liked them.
Well, you're
I know
gonna
that
then have
sounds
to break
strange,
it
but
down.
I literally didn't think about this until we were having this conversation, and it goes back to one of my original points. I don't live in one of these pump zones. Even some of the speakers who thought they lived in one of the pump zones don't live in the pump zones. So it's confusing, at the least. There's definitely some historical. Something went wrong in the past, and we may hopefully find out, we may not, but even though I don't live in a pump zone, I still think that I benefit from some of the pumping. My water does definitely get pumped to a tank somewhere, and I think that it makes sense to have at least the rest of our customers, myself included, who doesn't pay any of these pump charges, to contribute something to this endeavor, if you will. And I think if we go with the plan that I had tried to articulate on the fly of keeping the current charges as is, not raising them, not lowering them, and then taking the additional cost and adding some sort of pump charge fee of 3 cents or 3.5, depending on what it is. If maybe we don't have to decide on this today. Maybe the direction is to have staff come back at the next meeting with whatever the exact number is. I know as somebody who's not currently paying a pump charge, I would be willing to pay my share of that at 3 and 3.5 cents. And I think that represents the majority of those folks folks who obviously don't live in a pump zone. So you're talking about a lot of the subdivisions, and they're more of your typical kind of 1,500 to 2,500 square foot homes. They're probably they fall in that kind of average range of 10 to 12 units per month. A 3 to 4 cent increase for somebody who's using 4 cents, or 10 units is, it's 40 cents per month. I don't think that's too much to ask for them to contribute to the benefit that I believe that I am and they are receiving, for some pumping charges, even though I live in a valley.
Director Murray.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Your idea wasn't my like your idea. Can I just make a quick statement?
We're past
That's
public
not really how it
comment,
works.
sir.
There'll be an opportunity at the end for more public comment, but we've passed the public
Well, no,
comment.
my comment is solutions, not the problem. You mentioned the solution, I just want to give an addendum to the solution.
I would allow
the
it.
president.
Go ahead.
Thank you.
Well, but you got to come up.
And you gotta fill out a form.
Yeah.
You gotta do all the other guys' stuff too.
Give your name.
My name is Bill Mansfield. I live in Coronado Hills
Oh,
for
surprise.
almost 20 years. And I'm not going to talk about the problem, because we all talked about that, but solutions. And I concur with Mr. Sanella's philosophy. If we're going to, I don't know if it would be 3 cents or 2.5 cents, but if you made a minimum of 3 cents for everybody, minimum, and everybody else stayed the same, I don't know if that would, you have 19,000 plus another 869 people in the schoolhouse district. So everybody's paying at least 3 cents, maybe 2.5 cents. I don't know if that would make the numbers work, but if it did, that's negligible for people who are right now not even in a pump zone. Now, voicing what he said, he wouldn't be upset, but you can send it out and see if how other people would feel.
Okay.
I mean, that makes things, it seems like that's an easy fix. But you also have to work on the future of this business, so 5 years from now, we don't have this problem again. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Murray.
I don't know the number, and I know we're not going to have a resolution tonight on this, because there's going to be a lot more forethought that goes into it. But I'm sure I'm going to recommend, when I make a motion, that we forestall this another 60 days and look a little more into this and come up with some more ideas, thoughts, and solutions for how we come up with this money. Like many of you said, I think, though, unless we look at the past and how we got here, we're bound to make those mistakes in the future. So I think this board needs to seriously look at, how did we get to having to have such a jump in a 2-year period? How did that happen? Now, I'm just mentioning we did change our general manager. We have a brand-new general manager. Wasn't here at the time. So I know it's not him. But I'm just saying we need to look at it. We need to research it. We need to find out why this information wasn't given to us. And we need to know an answer. I've been told by people since I've been here that you always want to put the finger on somebody. Well, yeah. I've always been in the business where people put the finger on me if I did something wrong. But I'd like to know the answer to that. So with that, we're not going to make an answer, but I think 3 cents as a number is a kind of ridiculously low number. But I think the high numbers that we have now are ridiculously high numbers. So I think there's got to be a way that we cannot make this a total socialized system, because I don't think that's correct. Like our school system, you all pay school taxes, no matter where your children go.
If you have
Everybody's the
children.
same. If you have children. I never had children. I paid school taxes my entire life. Not fair to me, but it is, because overall, I get the benefit of having kids in school rather than graffitiing my house. So this is going to take a lot more looking at than just tonight, but gosh, I really appreciate everybody that came out and spoke tonight, and thank you.
All right. Director Hernandez.
Yes, and I concur with what both the directors say, but I did want to, because we had some people that asked some questions, and I think it was important to give them some answers, that at least that I have, and we can find out the other questions and get answers to them. But one of the speakers, who I don't believe is here any longer, was talking about, do we do planning? Well, yes, of course we do planning. Maybe of course is not obvious to you folks, but we have a master plan that we go through and we adjust. We have a capital improvement plan that we adjust, and these things take place. That's why the whole district is paying a portion of these pump charges already. I'm going to repeat that. The whole district is paying a portion of these pump charges already. So it's they're already beginning to work on that. The other thing was, gentleman farmer there, not so dumb, but I understand your problem. That was the state. That was the state. That was the governor and his folks that said you need to cut back to a year that you had already previously cut to. I happen to have a friend who has a ranch, and sit back down because we're not going to let you talk, sir.
I'm not going to sit down, because what I did is I came to this board and I said, who is it that made that decision? And this board pointed to San Diego Water Authority. I went to San Diego County Water Authority. They pointed to the state.
And
I went
that's
to the state, and they pointed to you. So everybody was like this.
Well,
so don't tell me now.
I'm telling you the truth.
Yeah, well, I don't know what the truth is.
Well, I'm telling you the truth. I'm telling you the truth right now.
I tried to find out, and I got a bunch of different.
I appreciate that, and that's why I'm trying to explain it to you now, sir. Because, and you can believe it or not, but that's all right. But because I have a good friend just passed, who is Holy Guacamole. You know, he hasn't picked fruit in the last 5 years because of the same issue, water rates. But same thing happened to him. Cut his trees, then the allocation came to the state, went through San Diego Water Authority, came to us, and we passed the notice on. So it was the state that mandated that particular year with which you then had to reduce, which you've already done. So that's the answer to that, believe it or not. The other question that was asked, and that I didn't think got an answer, no, I guess that was it. But I will reiterate what Director Martin said. We are going to take this, we're going to mash it around and see how we can more equitably look at the increase, and there will be an increase.
What's the possibility of solar power? Can you kick that?
Oh, the solar power. Thank you very much. Solar power, yes. I have been pushing to look at that for 3 years, and we are looking at it. There was a reason why we didn't jump to doing it 3 or 4 years ago. That's because the SDG&E would not allow us to put solar panels on only at the area that we were going to use it. And so those big tanks out there in Twin Oaks Valley that we're going to be covering ultimately, because now that's gone, there will be solar panels out there, and we're going to charge you for them. So, you know, we're going to, that's the way the world works. But yes, we're working towards that. We've got I think next month, we got a person speaking to that, actually. I'll check to that to be sure, but that ultimately is going to take place. So,
Could I ask, we have our engineer speak on that? Because we've been pushing for solar on our tanks for a long time. We have it out here for this building, but how are we coming along on that? And we haven't seen a cost reduction in order to do that. I think that's the reason why it didn't pay for itself.
Yeah,
But if staff could answer us.
And while they're coming up, I'll just say, when you leave tonight, if it's still light outside, you'll see our carports. They're all covered with solar panels. So we have explored it. From everything that we've seen so far as a board, it doesn't. The initial cost to do it, the return on the investment doesn't always pencil out. So it's.
Well, the other big issue is the amount of land required for solar. It takes about 3 or 4 acres of land to produce enough power for about a megawatt of electricity, which is about 1,200 horsepower. So that, you know, if you're looking at one pump station that's got that much horsepower, it's a significant area to, you know, to have to purchase or lease or whatever.
I'll rent you 32 acres, and that's going to have any trees on it.
we've got 13 acres.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Sure. Directors, actually, you guys pretty much covered most of the reasons. The only thing I could add to that is SCG is also changing the rules. Unlike home solar, which you have a 20-year guarantee from when you get the date of issuance, that your tariffs and the way they treat the net metering will be guaranteed for 20 years. For commercial ag and for water districts, there's no guarantee. So you could have an actuary where you have a payback in, let's say, 10 years or 15 years, put $20 million, $15 million of solar panels on a system, and SCG&E could change the rules in 2 to 5 years, which all of a sudden now your payback is 25, 30 years, and then another 5 years they could change the rules again. Matter of fact, there's a litigation with SCG&E and several water agencies to try and pin them down, so this way we could actually do some type of forward planning to know if those solar panels will ever have a payback or not. Because at this time, there's no commitment to those rules. So it's very much different than a home solar panel system. The rules do not apply from your home system to like a commercial or a water district system. The other reasons are, as you guys mentioned, SCG&E wanted the solar panels to be, for example, at your house, it's for your house. We have a large tank site, a great area potential was the gentleman I think before mentioned there's the treatment plant. Treatment plants use tremendous energy. They put solar panels at a treatment plant to help offset that. Tanks use none. So putting solar panels there doesn't help. The rules got changed. SCG&E is looking at now we could maybe put solar panels in one place, but use it for several of our meters, several of our pump stations. Sounds great. But then they said, well, but we're not going to guarantee the tariffs. So in other words, you're not grandfathered in to a net metering tariff like you are at your house. And the cost itself, there's a lot of still standard costs with the pump stations. It's much more complicated than a simple meter at your house. But similar to that, you're paying $10. If you have a home, you're paying $10 or $15 a month for the SCG&E meter. Our meters are much larger. The costs are a lot greater. So it cuts into that payback quite a bit. So hopefully that answers some of those questions.
Thank you. Director Evans, do you have any comments?
I think the board's doing a really good job. I agree with them. We need to look into it.
I'll just offer the comment. I agree with Directors Martin and Sinella to take some time and evaluate maybe a couple of different permutations of some of these. I believe there's value, some value district-wide, so it kind of in keeping with the concept that Director Sinella mentioned, there's value to that storage at higher elevation should there be an emergency situation. I want to point out, like Director Hernandez did, that the rest of the customers are already subsidizing some of it. They're already subsidizing some of the non-electricity costs as well, which we haven't really articulated what the dollar value of that is, but I imagine it's on the order of $100,000 or $200,000 a year. So, but that's something we can explore also. Director Snow.
And I'm glad that we're not moving forward with anything tonight, but maybe it's the private sector side of me, but I feel like if we just leave here and say, let's come back in 60 days and see what staff comes up with, we're going to be in the same spot then than we are tonight. So is there consensus to at least have staff crunch the numbers and get us the exact numbers for the plan that I had proposed earlier, where we share some of that cost, rightfully so in my opinion, with the rest of the district, and leave these rates as they are today? Is there consensus so they can at least go back and have some direction from us, so they can come back 60 days or whenever it is to have something, versus just they come up with another set of A, B, C, D, and E, and we're looking at it for the first time?
No, I understand. I think the only issue I have with leaving the rates the same is that the rate as it currently is doesn't make sense to me. There's like some of the speakers have pointed out, there's pump zones at the same HGL that are vastly different in the amount they're paying currently, and that just does not make any sense to me. I think there needs to be some kind of an adjustment in the current schedule. You know, whether the net value of the total dollar may be the same, but that needs to be adjusted, because that's why we're having 1,200 or 2,000% rate increases, because this existing schedule has a problem.
I don't know whether it's 30 days or 60 days, but what I really need to get my mind around is definitively when we talked about this the last time and what the number was. Definitively, what all of the ratepayers are presently paying for these extra pump charges today. And then, as Director Sinella said, some extrapolation, and unfortunately, Director Sinella, I don't think one scenario is going to come back and be the one to bless. So I think a couple of scenarios as to how to spread this over all of the ratepayers so that it's unfavorable to everybody.
I think Schedule E, showing a 10% general benefit, this is my personal thoughts, showing a 10% is along the right track. That reduces the rates considerably, but I personally would like to see if that was 20% or 25%, what that would do to the numbers, because I can justify in my mind that the upper elevations, although we're paying more to pump it up there, it could have a general benefit in case of a fire, in case of many things. We can move water from one to the other. There's a lot of good things we can do because we have higher tanks. So I would, and I think that I could back that rather than a social system of everybody pays the same. It's like healthcare, everybody pays the same. I would like to see you come back with other numbers on the mutual benefit that we can put a percentage on for everybody. And I would also like to come back and see what Mr. Hernandez was asking about. When was the last time we discussed this? What were the numbers we discussed? And maybe you can look up the video for us so we can have it.
You're referring prior to the January meeting, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Back whenever the last time it was discussed, because we have videos of all those meetings, and we can go right back to them and see when this was discussed in depth, not on a consent calendar.
Yeah.
Well, I would really concur with all of that. I think Director Martin's right in starting with the Schedule E pump as an alternative and spreading that. I concur with Chair Ellithorpe that I don't believe that it's exactly going to work, that we can keep the current charges, but I do understand where my Director Sinella is coming from in that. And then I appreciate what you're asking for on the definite answers on what we've done and what we're paying. And I am curious, if possible, if you may have included that, what exactly the O&M portion is as well.
Yep. Yeah, I have a note there to bring those costs forward.
I thought it was in that, but and I do hope that if it takes one or two efforts to do this, we do it right. And my thanks to all of you who were here. Thank you for responding to the letter and voicing what you feel and making it personal for all of us.
And I would also ask that you also send a letter out letting the ratepayers know the meeting that we're going to have and what the numbers are, and giving them some heads up time so that they can see it. And it will be a business letter. It's not going to be empathetic to your problem or yours. It's just going to be, hey, we're doing this, come on back. And let's make some more sausage.
The outreach, we're happy to do the outreach, just so the board knows it costs us about $1,300 every time we send out the letters to the 2,800.
Oh, we're just going to charge it to them?
Yeah, we'll put it, but we could, if we have a long enough lead time, we could just incorporate it into their water bill statement too. We could start putting in a general announcement about a future date for it.
Yeah. Oh, and also, sorry, and, we've been here 2 hours and 15 minutes. Perhaps the next meeting that we hold could just be a workshop relative to this. I mean, take a look at the agenda. We have staff out there, by the way, that's being paid overtime that we appreciate for these meetings that's appropriate. But we still have more agenda to take care of. So perhaps the next one, if it's going to be a lengthy discussion, we have a workshop so that it's just solely this issue, so we don't have to worry about it. But that'll be up to the general manager.
I'd like to recommend that tonight we set a date to have such a special meeting, for us to discuss this with staff, and then be able to send a letter out. You know, we don't have to take that long. I mean, there's $409,000 a month that's being passed on to everybody right now, and that's just not right. So perhaps sometime early in April, we could plan on having a workshop meeting, and out of that workshop meeting, send out a 60-day notice saying what we finally came up with.
If it is in April, it'll have to be after the 12th. I'll be gone to try to get us more money.
Yeah, it would have to be after the 12th, yeah.
Okay.
So just a thought, let's set the meeting tonight so it's not postponed. And yet the urgency is there that, you know, that's 3 weeks away, then we give another 60 days, so get something accomplished.
So what date would you suggest we do it, Director Meyer?
I would recommend, we have a board meeting on the 19th, I would recommend on the 20th of April.
Say that again, I can't.
20th of April, that's a Thursday. The day after a board meeting.
All right.
And then that would give us July 1st for an increase if there is going to be one. But the letter would go out in plenty of time for people to come back. But hopefully the people that are here are going to understand we're going to try and do the best we can with what we got. Well, it's not going to be
That'll
3
be a
cents.
fat chance.
3 cents ain't
That's a
gonna happen.
fat chance. We raise it a penny, there'll be people here.
Glenn, do you have enough direction?
That's
Yeah, I think so. I see this being similar to Alternative E, but maybe increasing the percentage of cost being picked up by the non-pump zone customers. Because I do like the hybrid approach in that, one thing I don't like about the sticking with the current charge per unit, it does not accurately reflect how the costs are being incurred. So it'll continue a subsidy across the zones.
But we're giving you enough time to bring back O&M as well, because that's more information we still want. What your O&M is on those, because we don't know what's already being passed on to the 18 or 19,000 people.
Well, sure, so I can bring back the O&M costs. What you want me to do with those costs is a different subject. You want it to be thrown in with the electrical costs? Is that what the
We'll
board
look and see what they are, so that we know.
No, I get that, and I can do that. I just don't want to come back to a meeting and not have crunched the numbers based on on how much O&M costs are.
Well, then I would request the numbers and have it both ways,
Okay,
so we can look at it.
We can
and
do
make
that.
a decision.
Yeah.
Giving us the information to make a valid decision, it's fantastic tonight.
Right.
Wish we had done this a month ago.
Oh, we didn't know a month ago.
Well, we knew the rates were outrageous.
Well,
We knew that.
we did the first step, got the people here.
And the notice that we sent out, did that go to all the ratepayers or just the pump?
no, the two letters went out. The
Yeah.
letters went out to just the pump zone customers.
Yeah, well, I am requesting that the letter go out to the entire district, because you can imagine, we're gonna raise the rates on everybody else, and they're gonna show up and they'll look at a bill and go, hey, what the heck happened here? And so I want the full district to understand what's going on, so
Yeah.
I would request we send it out either in the billing or a notice in the billing or something that, what's going on here, to be fully transparent.
So if we did the full district, it's probably looking at closer to $10,000 if it's a specific outreach. If you wanted to include it in the bill, then there's a problem because our billing cycle may not get to every customer before the meeting date that we're talking about.
And nobody reads what's in a bill, we all throw it out.
Well, yeah, but at least they'll have an opportunity to look at it. I mean, to be
When we come
notified.
in an SDG&E bill, all the stuff that's stuffed in there, do you really look at it?
Yeah, but now, this is kind of interesting because I believe we need to let all the ratepayers know about this whole situation.
I don't disagree, I agree with you.
Okay.
I agree with that.
All right.
I'm just saying, it needs to be it needs to be an investment.
Oh.
A couple things. So, to your first point, Glenn, I'm okay with, it sounds like we're kind of thinking along the same lines, but instead of doing a percent increase, we look at adjusting your 10% to maybe 35 or 40%. If you could bring back what that looks like, 30%, 40%, 50%, so we have those options.
I actually have those numbers right now.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, we just we're trying to make a manageable set of alternatives for the board's consideration. We could have come up with literally hundreds of alternatives. And one thing I'd like the public to understand is there is no right answer. I seem to get the sense that some people say, well, you've gotten it wrong. But if this room had been filled with people at lower elevations, they'd be having a very different perspective. So we're trying to come up with alternatives that kind of address the spectrum of perspectives in this.
They would, I agree with you, they'd have it. I'm sure there's gonna be some people that will come and say that, hey, you're increasing my bill by 50 cents per month, okay? But that's different than putting somebody out of business, raising the rates $1,200 a month. So, you know, I think that there's some common sense that needs to kind of play into this. But I would like to see those numbers. We can, we can look at, if you have them, I mean, I'm open all night, so we can look at this tonight if the board so chooses to.
Is it gonna make any difference? Are we not gonna make any, we're still gonna have the question, I'm still gonna have the questions that I asked for. So I don't think we need to spend more time looking at 40, 50, 60% because it's just more fodder. Let's bring it back with the questions that at least I've asked, so that I can get some answers on, so I can get a full knowledge of what's taking place.
That's fine. And then the second part, I wasn't quite done, on the mailing, is that I agree with Director Hernandez that from a transparency standpoint, we need to mail something to the entire district. However, I wanted to ask, does it have to be a letter? Can we save money if we do like a postcard, like or something like that? I don't know. But.
We'll explore the cheapest way to get it out that we can convey the information. Problem is when you go with a postcard, other than just saying, hey, you're invited to a meeting, it's hard to give them anything of substance in the small real estate you have on a postcard. But we'll explore it.
Yeah, I'd just like to say, Director Snell, that my heart goes out to you, but I know that anything more than 3 cents per unit, you're gonna be against the people in this room. But what are the other 20,000 people gonna think when they're subsidizing? I don't know the answer to that. So I think it's important that we get that out and not play to the audience we have here tonight. Let's look at everything and make a decision based on all the facts we can gather, including O&M, those kind of questions.
Director Hernandez, or Martin, just to make sure that you understand what I'm proposing is not 3 cents across the board. That wouldn't cut it anyways. My initial proposal was just to leave it as is. So pump 1 would be 50 cents, pump 2 would be 20 cents, pump 3 and so forth and so forth. So they would still be paying significantly higher than everybody else in the district. The 3 cents would just be for to cover the offset that this is not covering, that the rest of the district would pay for, because they do realize some benefit from the pumping. And so they would be paying, they're in my mind, I'm trying to rationalize that their value is 3 cents, but all these folks would still be paying 50 cents, 20 cents, 58 cents, 25 cents, significantly higher. The only one that would really kind of come out of this looking good is where Mike thought he lived, in the schoolhouse one. So, because they would still be at 1 cent, but everybody else in these pumping zones would be paying still significantly higher than the rest. The rest of the folks would only be paying in what I believe is their fair share of this.
Director Evans?
Yes, I would just like to propose at this point that we do another meeting, we gather our information, we get the alternatives, we discuss it at that point. Even if we went on for another half hour, we couldn't really discern anything until we had all the full information. So, and this becomes a question to you, Glenn. Do you feel that you can get this out and have a public hearing available on the 20th of April? Because I'm assuming we've all agreed the 20th is available.
Mhm.
No one said it wasn't. So that's my first concern is, can we get the public here for it? And if we cannot, then we need to pick a different date.
Yeah, we could certainly get an invitation, a letter out of some kind to invite people to that meeting in the time frame that we're given. I'm confident that from a technical perspective, we can provide the board with a new array of alternatives that would address the concerns that are raised by the board members and members of the public. I think we can do it. I haven't had a chance to coordinate with staff to make sure their availability. I'll be here.
Okay. I think, I'm just saying, I feel we need to move forward, and the real progress is going to happen when we have the information. Is the suggestion.
And as Director Martin said, the investment of the money to send out the notice is important to me personally, because I do want all of the ratepayers to understand the problem that we're grappling with.
Any other comments? Is that clear direction?
I think, I just want to make sure the board's aware that it could be close to $10,000.
Yep.
And as long as they're okay with that, we'll make it happen.
Do we need a motion for that, sir?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
And the date set for
20?
the 20th of April?
Yeah.
At 5 PM here.
Workshop?
Yeah.
At 5 PM.
Workshop format.
And Director Martin, would that be at 5 PM? Is that the recommendation?
Yeah.
Okay.
So if these folks can be here.
All right, well, thank you. I want to thank everybody for their indulgence. This hasn't been an easy matter. We'll get there, I'm sure.
All right.
Okay, item 2.2, change order request for MEADOWLARK Water Reclamation Facility, tertiary and immediate filter replacement.
Move to approve.
Question. Lots of questions.
Lots of questions there.
Jason's going to take this item for us.
Can I take this?
You may, yeah.
Just want to make sure that that was off the screen. Thank you, President Elithar and fellow directors. I'm here to talk about a change order request for the MEADOWLARK Water Reclamation Facility Tertiary Filter Media Replacement Project. Just to refresh the board's memory, the tertiary filters are 6 concrete basins that process the secondary wastewater effluent into recycled water. So the district did a study, determined that the media in those filters was too coarse, needed to be replaced with something much finer that would reduce small particles in the effluent and would produce a higher quality of recycled water, and more importantly, reduce the chemical use that the plant is currently using, so reduce those chemical costs. Yes?
Let me ask you a question.
Yes.
I've had so many different answers for this in 5 years. The MEADOWLARK facility, first I was told that it pays for itself. Then I was told, oh no, now it's only the tertiary. We pass the cost on to the people that purchase our water. If that being the case, why are we listening to this? No matter what the cost is, we're gonna be passing it on to the people that use our water. Not like they have a choice.
Sure. Well, the reason is, district policy, ordinance 146, any construction order, change order greater than 10% of the construction value requires board approval. So I need board approval.
Okay, can you tell me that we're gonna recoup all of this money? Or can somebody tell me that? I have a real problem with MEADOWLARK, and especially with the reclaimed water. It's the right thing to do. I don't argue that, or I get letters. The right thing to do, but I think it costs us money. It's never been proven any otherwise to me. So, do you know?
I would say we are going to get reimbursed, but I would defer to the finance department for
Reimbursed
confirmation.
100% for everything we do there that has to do with recycled water. It has to do with the reservoir, has to do with all the pipes, has to do with everything. We're 100%, our labor, 100% reimbursed.
I believe that's true for tertiary.
The agreements that we have to sell our recycled water are based on the cost to produce that recycled water. So it includes the things that you're talking about. We're looking to restructure those agreements so that there's actually some incentive for us to actually save costs. Because right now, if we invested a lot of capital, say we put solar out there and it reduced the cost of water, we would just get less money from the agencies that buy water from us. So there's no incentive for us to do things in a more efficient manner. So we want to make sure we restructure the agreements in such a way that it does incentivize us to be more efficient and to recapture all of our costs.
So you're saying, Glenn, that 100% of our cost is being recaptured by who we sell it to?
Well, I'm going to be cautious there. I don't know in depth. I'll look to maybe Tom or Jeff.
Yeah, I mean, the recycled portion, there's a certain portion that to make sure that we've got it at a certain level to send to Encina. But yes, I mean, a portion of this contract order will be passed on to Carlsbad, a portion, to upgrade it.
What portion and why not completely? It's all tertiary, that's all he's talking about doing, tertiary filters, is that correct?
Yes?
Yeah, well, then theoretically, that'll be passed on, that'll be accounted for, and it will go into, it won't, there may be a period of time that we get that payback. It may not be as, you know, a check will come over next week, but yes, then to the extent it benefits recycled water, the answer is yes.
Well, I understand it benefits recycled water, I understand all the good things.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to get to the point, are our customers paying anything because we do tertiary and sell it, not at what we should be selling it for, or because the dam, the pipes, all that costs more than what we're getting back?
As Glenn explained, we recover all our costs to do that. That's what the agreement says. Okay?
All right. I heard it here, thank you.
No problem. So that was the reason for this project. The board awarded a construction agreement to Carbon Activated Corporation December 7th. We went through the normal process and actually began removing the media February 13th. Immediately staff discovered that the existing coding system was failing. The reason we did not know that before is because it was below the media elevation. We couldn't see it. So until we removed it, we couldn't see that there was a problem. So we immediately contacted a contractor that we have a relationship, got some recommendations on how to make these repairs, got a quote, working with management on how to move forward. We did direct that contractor to move forward with those repairs. As I mentioned, per district policy, ordinance 146, any change orders over 10% require board approval. Our construction contract is $250,000 to replace the media. This change order is $158,000. So clearly above that 10,000 threshold. The reason we did move forward, and I guess I'm here asking for forgiveness, is we had several reasons that would prevent us from delaying making those decisions. One is if we just ignored the problem and said, hey, we'll take care of it another time, all the money that was spent replacing this media would just have to be done again. This project was scheduled during the winter months because demand is low. We can actually do this project. We have to get this done before the warmer summer months occur, because then we have those contractual obligations to Carlsbad and Liebenheim to produce the recycled water. We need the plant at full operation. So to delay making a decision 2.5, 3 months, we had the potential of incurring remobilization and delay costs from our contractor, as well as putting pressure on the plant not having it at full operation. So the fiscal impact of this change order, $158,000, does put this project over budget. I'm not asking for a budget amendment at this time because the project is not completed. I don't have all my final numbers yet, but when I bring forward acceptance of this project, I'll be asking for a budget amendment at that time. So right now, I'm just, staff is recommending that the board approve this change order to Carbon Activated in the amount of $158,803, subject to the provisions of their contract, and I can answer any more questions you may have.
Director Murray.
Did I understand this correctly? When you signed the contract, you thought you needed one type of thing, but upon pulling out the old stuff, you found out you needed a different type of thing?
This is actually, the current job is very simple. Remove the media, put new media in.
Right.
Once we removed the media, we looked at the basins and said the coating on the sides, that coating that coats and protects the concrete, was failing. So it was never in the original scope of the contractor. In fact, he's not doing the work. It's another contractor that does that specialty work.
Thank you for bringing that down to basics. And so my question is, how often does that coating take place? Is that something you should have been aware of? Or is that something that no one thought about?
The coating was, yeah, the coating was installed during the original upgrades, 2004, 2005-ish. I believe at that time, the coating system that they used was appropriate. I don't think they ever envisioned that the current effluent that's running through those basins has as much chlorine and is as caustic as it currently is. So they should have been and should have used a more robust system that we're putting on now as part of the repairs. But there would be really no way for us to know because we never see it. It's always below the media. We don't dig through it. We don't, you know what I mean? It's just not visible.
So it doesn't have a standard useful life, like a pipe
Coating
does.
systems, are typically warranted for 5-10 years. It just depends on the manufacturer. Certainly the installer who originally installed that coating, he warranted the work for a year. We're long since past that.
Everybody does it, yeah. Thank you very much.
You kind of answered the question I was going to ask. What is our warranty on this particular project?
This new product that we're putting in is warranted for 5 years. Just so you know, that product is a much thicker, much more chemically resistant coating. It's currently used elsewhere in the plant. It's shown its longevity, if you will. So it was an easy decision to go to that product.
So it's warranted for the next 5 years.
Yes.
What's, just based off of your team's expertise, what's your anticipated life?
I would think it would last 10-20 years.
10 or 20? That's a big gap. So 15, we're shooting for 15? Somewhere in the middle?
That would be ideal. I can tell you at 4.5 years, we will look at it again to make sure that it is holding up to the warranty.
But the media, you change every 10 years.
Shouldn't be changing this media again. This media was designed with the expansion of the plant, using that foresight of where we want to get that plant at 6.5 MGD production. So theoretically, we shouldn't have to, but I'm not going to guarantee it.
Thank you very much.
All right, any other questions?
Move to approve.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the construction change order to Carbon Activated Corporation in the amount of $153,803. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, say no. Carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Item 2.3, 2017 Cost of Service and Rate Structure Study Review and Update.
Yes, thank you, President Althorpe and members of the board. This should only take a couple of hours.
Yeah, you've got 2 minutes.
Thanks a lot. Starting on page 49 of your board packet is a staff report just on the progress that we've made so far on the rate study development. On February 15th, we presented a detail to you for the cost of service study that, as it was going on, we got board consensus to proceed with certain things with a customer classes by meter size, with the tier 3 set at the maximum average use, and then we went forward and finished the spreadsheet that I put in the board packet that you find in your board packet is a documentation of the calculations and the methodologies. There are placeholders in there for numbers. They're not the budget. We're not done with the budget yet, but just to see how the items flow. And the idea of it is that actually have the rate model almost done. The rate model will be done by the time we meet again for the Finance Committee meeting. So looking ahead for the Finance Committee meeting, we will be addressing and looking in detail at the rate model and how that came together. And we'll also have a presentation on some of the other things that happened that we've changed since we presented back in February 15th. I did intend to address any questions you have. I wasn't going to go through in detail again what you have before you, but it is just if you can look at the table of contents on page 50. We go through the water rate history, how we got here, how we determine the customer classifications, and then the demand projection and how we developed the tier structure that you have before you. And that all got rolled into the rate model. There were some tweaks as we went through the rate model, and I can point those out now, or when we go through in detail at the Finance Committee meeting. One of them I'll just point out to you was on the big page 61, where the big allocation is. Originally, the cost of service study done before had an arbitrary 80-20 split on some of these costs between fixed and variable. One of the goals was to eliminate anything arbitrary. So we did do a study. That's what I'll be presenting at the Finance Committee meeting. And we kept the the costs closely associated with water. That would be pumping, water quality, water treatment, tanks, reservoirs, transmission and distributions. Those O&M costs we kept in the commodity rate, but the other ones we moved to the meter charge because they were fixed in nature, and I'll go over that. So now we at least have a nexus between that. but I didn't want to spend the time here. We'll go to it in more detail, but I'd be glad to answer any questions that you have.
Didn't we just do a rate study like this? Was it a year or two ago?
This, in 2016, Black and Veatch completed a rate study, and it was based on customer classes by customer type.
Whatever. We just did this 2 years ago. So just so you know, in my mind, I'm looking at cost of living went up 2% and 2%, 4%. You go more than that, go back to your old methodology. Because your rates that you're coming up with lately are just astronomical. And I don't want this to be another one. Because you changed your method.
Well, Director Martin, I mean, the intent is to recapture the costs, so it's a very systematic way of seeing what the costs are and then finding a way to appropriately spread those
And that's what the
costs.
intent was 2 years ago when we did it. And we made some major jumps 2 years ago. I remember, Betty Ferguson was telling, we made some major jumps in those studies. So I don't expect to see those major jumps again because the cost of living hasn't gone up that much.
And I've said it 25 times, and I'm going to say it again. Until we have a significant conversation about cutting costs, there's two ways to recover your cost. You can either increase your revenue by going into the ratepayers and getting it, or you can lower your cost of operations. We, in my opinion, have not done that to satisfy me, and I'm not going to consider any rate increases until we have that conversation.
Yeah, the cuts will be discussed with the budget, and the budget will roll into this so you can see the impact.
Director Hernandez.
I know that the Finance Committee has had a couple of meetings, and I thought I heard that we were going to get a summary or some kind of a document to identify that, and I haven't seen that, and I'm trusting that you're beating that horse to death, and
I have an answer for you. We are now, at the insistence of one of our members on the board, we are now being voice recorded, so it's available on tape. And also at our last meeting, 4 of the 5 board members were there.
yeah, well, I'm trusting, I'm not going to be there, but again, we said we were going to have a report. I haven't seen a report, and believe me, I don't care how many Finance Committee meetings you guys have, before this sausage is done being made, we're going to have a workshop to go through all this. So you guys can mash the thing to death, and I hope you do, because what Director Sinella just suggested, or stated, not suggested, stated, is going to be part of this whole process, and I'm going to be waiting to put my head around it, and I'm not going to be attending your Finance Committee meetings.
Thank you, Mr. Hernandez. And that, may I direct the general manager to please get a set of minutes from the meeting?
Oh, yeah, because I'm not going to listen to the video or the recording either. I got other fish to fry.
The Finance Committee meeting minutes from February 22nd are in this board.
They're in this packet.
They're in the packet.
Oh, are they?
Yeah.
Well,
But I would like to
thank
say,
you.
if I may, Chair, the minutes do not reflect the intensity of the information that was given. You need to be there. And my suggestion was actually, I really feel that the Finance Committee is, and should fold into a workshop, because we're talking about a lot of details that all 5 of us need to be briefed on, and I do not feel it's a responsible way to pay staff to have a Finance Committee meeting and then pay them to then do another presentation to the board when it's the same thing. In fact, I noticed in the minutes, it said something about part of what was at the finance meeting. It was a very good meeting, but it doesn't reflect it in minutes. It said something about part of this had already been presented 3 times. Well, staff is not being used very wisely if we're asking you to do it 3 times, and I do not feel we're learning anything if we have to do it 3 times. So I would really suggest that the Finance Committee just becomes a workshop. There's absolutely nothing they've brought forward in the finance things that I think any of us would not have benefited from learning from. And I agree here with Jim. He's going to want to ask all those same questions again, and we're just making a duplicity, a triplicity of this information. That's just my response. I was there as a person in the audience, and very, very interesting, but incredibly informative. And I'm really sorry you weren't there, Jill. So I would just propose that we go for workshops only on, especially when we're talking about the nitty-gritty on this issue.
I happen to be a firm believer in the committee system. If there's something I want to know and somebody's having a committee, I go to it, and I learn that way. But that's a choice that two of you made last time, and I agree with that. If you want to make it a meeting for you, show up. It's not closed, it's a wide open meeting, and you're allowed to ask questions. As was stated at the beginning of the meeting, you weren't there for that. There were no decisions being made, no votes being taken, and because there were three of us at that point. And so you can come and ask as many questions as you want. The technicality, whether you call it a finance or a workshop, we can change the finance meeting to workshop meetings. I don't care. But the finance meeting should stay the finance meeting. That's what you have, that's what we form these things for at the beginning of every year.
I like the finance committee format as well, and I'm glad that Director Evans found it informative when she attended. But having said that, if we want to call them workshops and we want to schedule workshops instead of finance committee meetings, I'll be there one way or the other. So just as long as it's the same dates, then I don't care what we call it. If it's just semantics, I just want to get the work done. It's what we call it doesn't matter.
Well, that being the case, my opinion is it probably ought to be a workshop. There's enough interest in that I think that's warranted.
When's the date of the next?
29th.
29th of this month?
So let me add a little bit to that. So we had originally proposed a couple of finance committee dates, one on the 22nd of March and one on the 29th.
Right.
There was a conflict for the 22nd, so we're gonna have one on the 29th. And the second one, we're not sure, it's probably gonna be April 12th or possibly April 5th.
March 29th
March
and April.
29th and tentatively April 12th at this point in time.
So the minutes, if the minutes were correct when it said you'd scheduled two, but that's
Yes.
since changed.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
All right.
I'm not in agreement with the April 12th, but I certainly, if you want to cancel the one on the 22nd, go right ahead.
29th? Is it the 29th?
It's on the 29th.
It's on the 29th.
Right, but we don't have the one on the 22nd.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is I can't do the 12th of April. That's the date you chose.
Yeah, what we were trying to shoot for was a Wednesday that wasn't a board meeting, but it's possible we can have a workshop on April 5th if it's a light agenda or if it's something we may want to consider having a workshop instead of a regular board meeting.
Well, I'm not going to be here for the April 5th meeting, so that's the conflict.
So I'll somewhat backtrack on what I was saying, is this is exactly why we have a smaller, more lean, more efficient finance committee that can get this work done and then bring it back. Nothing's being decided, as Director Martin said, nothing's being voted on. It's just a leaner process, a more efficient process, so we actually get things done instead of sitting here and talk for 3 hours and we didn't vote on anything. And then we come back and the board, gets to see all the information at that time and can ask any questions that they want, and we get things done.
And all board members are willing, or can certainly attend if they want to. All board members can attend, and the ones that don't attend, they will get minutes from Diane.
The committee structure is an
simple.
example of good government. And if we don't want to do good government, that's really a shame.
What's that? Oh, I don't mind doing a workshop, but, it's interesting, because this whole evolution is coming back around to where it was when I first joined the board. We ultimately then had, they called it a committee meeting of the whole, where in fact we had all this information. We had a third meeting during the month. We had it at noon. We went through all the committee information. We discussed a lot of the technical aspects, and then we made a recommendation to the board, and then we went through it again in a little bit briefer composure, but then it got approved or denied or whatever, but at least it was hashed out. And, you know, we had the engineering committee, and the reason why was just that. We condensed it all and then brought some discussion to the board, because I didn't want to waste the board's time with a lot of what could be, might happen, and all this. So having the committees or having a workshop, I don't care what you call them, but again, this is a big enough, I mean, this is not just trying to do a fill station over by MEADOWLARK for $100,000 that was going to be split between us and Old Evenheim.
Get over it.
But this is monumental to the district. So we're going to end up having a workshop anyway, in my opinion. So call it what you will, have it when you will.
I was just going to say, it's a little bit more than just semantics. I want to make sure the staff gets clarity. Calling it a finance committee or a workshop, I don't care, but is it a committee or workshop of the whole, or is it a committee meeting of the finance committee as it's currently structured? That's the clarity I would need.
I would generally suggest that we don't do a committee of the whole. The committee of the whole is so close to a Brown Act violation, so close, because what happens, opinions are given, sides are taken, and although no vote is actually taken, anybody with half a brain can count the votes and knows what's going to happen.
We always notice them as a special meeting. We have always noticed those as a special meeting of the board. Whenever we think that there's 3 of you are going to show up, and one of you is not going to be just a potted plant observer, okay, which is not going to happen with this guy, with you guys, then we would notice that as a board meeting. That's the way we have to do it under the Brown Act. You're right. Okay?
Well,
we don't fool around with that.
And my vote would definitely be for finance committee meetings, as with engineering, as with whatever other people sit on. If I want to know, I go. If I don't, I let them come back with it, and that's fine.
But if you
Because some of
go,
our finance meetings have nothing to do with, we're talking about future stuff, which is definitely, but some of the finance meetings are not that.
but if you go as a third director, you can't say anything. You have to, you can be an observer, but you can't participate, because then that would be a violation of the Brown Act.
And if I may, I would like it to be a committee of the whole. And the reason is, we're talking about scheduling a date. The system is set up that there's 5 board members, and all 5 board members are supposed to know what's going on. The ideas of committees were that the board would agree to send people off, usually to work on a small issue, like you often do ad hoc things, and then you bring it all forward and present it. I don't believe that rate structures, I don't believe budgets, I don't think that those are individual specific little things that 2 people should present. If we say it's a workshop, what it entitles is that whoever shows up at the workshop can hear it and can answer and ask questions. Craig and I went to the meeting and I learned a great deal, but no, I was not open to ask questions or make comments, because then I would be participating as a director. So it's not the same. If it turns out on the 12th that we had a workshop and I couldn't go, we still have a workshop. If Jim can't go, we still have a workshop. If Hal can't go, we still have a workshop. Unless we don't have anyone here, we have a workshop. It doesn't make any difference. It doesn't have to be that certain people are at a workshop. The workshop is just like this meeting. We all try to be here, but if something comes up, we're not here, and we don't cancel the the 3rd Wednesday of the month because a board member can't be here. What we've done with the committee is we've denied the extra board members to participate, but only gather information. And then we are only the questions asked are being those dictated by the finance people. And on something as important as this, I really would like to see us make it a workshop. And then it's our responsibility as board members to do what we're supposed to do and be at our meetings.
And let me just say, I don't disagree. We had 2 finance meetings for a reason. One was specific and one was not. So what you're trying to say about future board meetings muddying the waters is not. Our finance committee has always been open to a lot of things. This is very specific when he's talking about rates And he said, we're gonna talk about the finance meeting. He didn't mention which one it was, because that's a very specific one. I thought, that's why we're having two within a week. One was specific, one was not. Am I wrong? Or why do we have one each week?
So the, excuse me, the first finance committee meeting, we were going to focus on the operating budget. The second one, we're going to focus on the capital budget. At each meeting, we'll probably continue to give the board updates, or the committee updates on the status of the progression of the rate structure. It's an evolving process. We want to, and our intent was to make sure that the board or the committee was aware of as it went along, so if we're going in a direction that's not acceptable to the board, we wouldn't have wasted a lot of time going in a particular direction.
You know, there's enough concern about having a meeting with the whole board. To me, through the budget process, I think it warrants full board workshops. That's just my opinion from what I've experienced in my career. I think it's more useful, and I think it's something that is more appropriate during this budget development time, that they be a series of full board workshops.
Does this require a motion? Because if it does, I'd like to make one.
I think just a consensus.
Just consensus.
Well, then let me
I
add-
would suggest
Let me add my 2 cents to that, because, again, I thought the committee was going to look specifically at some issues, but from what I hear,
Yes.
it is gathering information and hearing about rate studies and this, that, and the other that is larger than delving into how many employees we have or what's our
We're doing that too.
equivalent to, and I understand you are doing that, but it seems to be that it's broadening what's going on, so I would like to just have a workshop, and that way we don't have to do it twice, we can hear it all at one time.
And I agree with you, Jim. Now that staff has brought it to a broader, it was to delve into things. That's not their agenda. It's our agenda, but it's not their agenda. So it's trying to get them on base with, we make the agenda, not you. As I said, I didn't realize that both these were for the same basic thing. So yeah, that should be a workshop. I agree. The agenda was to delve into nooks and crannies, to find out what's going on without having to make a big public spectacle. But you all know I don't have a problem doing that if I have to. And I'm trying not to, but I certainly will if I have to. But I'm trying to do it in a finance format where it's not as a public spectacle as it will be.
So maybe here's the compromise. We do the workshops as it pertains to this specific, the budgeting and the rate structure. But I can support that if there's a motion or if that's just a consensus. But I also think that there's a lot of value in the finance committees, and I'm going to strongly suggest that we continue those so we can, a good question that came up earlier tonight, even before I think it was in the consent calendar, was, just like the cost that we spend on employee shoes. And what's the policy around that? How many pairs of shoes can an employee get per year? Is there a policy on that? Those are the kind of the level of detail where I don't think we need to, necessarily, hash that out in this type of, formal setting, but we need to hash that out.
Yeah.
And so I'm okay with if we transfer the budget and operation, or rate structure discussions to a workshop of the whole board, but that doesn't mean I'm in favor of eliminating the finance committee meetings. They need to remain on the calendar as is. I think we have one that's kind of standing every month, if I recall correctly, so we can go through those things.
And I would agree wholeheartedly with what you said, because I want you to find out how many shoes are necessary, and then bring it to me, and then I'll have an opinion about it. But I don't want to sit through a meeting to find that out.
Yeah.
And I appreciate delving in at that detail on not only shoes, but gloves and all the rest of the whole gamut. Yeah, so I would agree.
And just, that's how I envisioned the finance committee, was to delve into dollars and cents, very specific, so we don't have to bore the whole world with boots.
Line item by line item.
But that we look at it line item by line item, just to make sure that everybody else is.
Okay.
Kind of the reason why I bring up the warrant issue, it's like, do they know what's going on? Just signing checks. That's my fiduciary responsibility, as it is my fiduciary responsibility to know that these rate increases that we were just putting on people were obnoxious, outrageous. But we have a problem sending out a letter.
Well, do we want to set a workshop for the rate and the cost of service study
Sure,
and
sure.
information?
Sure, please. Sure.
So we're
Okay.
gonna keep the finance meeting on the 29th.
29th.
Right? And so now we gotta find an alternative date for the workshop, right? If I understand correctly? Sounds
Yeah.
like we got a consensus on that?
Yes.
So we had two finance committee meetings scheduled, so I'm not sure which ones we want to.
So 29th is the standing finance committee, that we're gonna be
That's
looking at
the
nooks and
April, the
crannies.
April finance meeting. So then the
April
next
29th.
one,
No, that's March 29th.
I'm sorry, March 20th.
We canceled the 22nd, March 29th. So how soon can we get consensus on 5 people? I mean, we want to keep the lights on. We need to get people to show up. Or if one person can't make it, oh well. No, they can't make it. And I would expect our staff to stand behind. When we need to be here, they need to be here. I'm sorry if their primary jobs get in the way.
Well, if I can address that, I do have some concerns about staff availability. It's not my expectation that every staff member be available any night, so I'm trying to manage that. If the finance committee is focused on more of a line by line, and it's not about broader context things like rate structures and budgets, then I would suggest that those meetings be appropriately held during the day, because it's not of general interest to the ratepayers. And anything that's focused more broadly on rates and budgets, then the broader budget discussions be held in an evening context.
Oh, you mean ratepayers won't show up? Not in the it is in their general interest, because if we can cut costs, that saves money. It's in their general interest, but not with us showing up at the meeting. That's what you meant by that. I'm trying to figure out.
Well, I'm trying to manage the impact on staff and the ability to turn information around in a timely fashion. From what I'm hearing, the reason to have the meetings at night is because they're talking about big things that would hit them like rates. Yes, that's important. Is the public interested in our line item budget for shoes?
Probably not.
Probably not. And I would argue that that's something that's more appropriate for a traditional workshop setting during the day or a finance committee meeting during the day.
What I would like to know, if I may, is the finance meeting that was planned for the 29th was going to be about the rates?
There's always, every meeting there'll be a rate update. But then we specifically had, I think, the O&M budget or the
Because the operating budget was going to be on
Operating
the
budget.
first of the finance
The
committee.
operating budget was going to be what you talked about at the next meeting?
That's one of the items we'll be talking about at the next meeting.
Okay, is that specifics, like how many nuts and bolts, or is it a generic presentation?
No, it's getting fairly specific. It's you know, we've requested from all the departments that they submit their draft operating budget for the proposed budget for next year. The finance department is in the process of going through those. There's a series of revisions that come in, and then we'll eventually come out of that with a fairly well scrubbed first cut at a budget recommendation from an operating perspective, not capital. That's the document that will be brought in front of the finance committee. It was not my expectation to get to the level of shoe budgets at that meeting, but we'll be prepared to go to whatever level of detail the board, or the committee members want to go. I would certainly like us to focus our attention on items that had a bigger impact on the overall budget. So if there's items that cost hundreds of thousands or millions, I would suggest we spend more time there than on a budget for shoes that may be in the thousands, single-digit thousands.
Well, and I agree with you, but as we heard tonight, people would prefer the hundreds of millions of dollars to be in a workshop. So that's going to be a workshop, not the finance committee. The finance committee will look at the nuts and bolts. Fine by me.
I'm just concerned how many meetings that will take to do what you're proposing. To do a line by line of the budget is a very complicated exercise.
Well, the finance committee has nothing else to do but that. That's their job. Everything else is now being reverted to having a workshop. That's my understanding.
We have a standing monthly finance meeting anyway, so it's gonna take us 12 meetings over the course of the year to go through this. I mean, it may or may not. It may not.
Will.
Yeah, and it probably will.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean we're gonna go through every single line. There may be some that we can look at real quickly and go, okay, that makes perfect sense, move on to the next one. Or it doesn't, and it requires more due diligence. So
Well,
it
if I
sounds
can
like-
interject, we don't have 12 months. We have a budget that's going to be presented that the board is going to be acting on June 7th, I believe is the date. We don't have 12
Yeah,
minutes.
but this is not a, this finance review.
I think this is an ongoing.
This is.
Oh, that's
This is
fine.
an ongoing
Yes.
thing. This is
So it's
not-
not specifically for the budget that's
No.
upcoming?
No, this is
I'm
just
sorry, my
to
lack of
understand
clarity.
all of our operational costs.
Okay, that's a different
And
animal.
to
Okay.
kind of drive continuous efficiencies
Okay.
forever.
No, I think that's a great use of the committee structure.
I agree.
I mean, there's a reason, I mean, I can't believe I'm saying something positive about Congress, but, you know, Congress has committees and subcommittees, that this is how government gets done. I don't understand why this is so shocking to some folks, but I know that we're at the very early, you know, the lowest level of government here at the Water Board, so, but that's how they do it in the big leagues.
All right.
Okay, so, and.
Lots of direction there?
The
You got
answer
it?
is we don't know what they're talking about at the next meeting yet. Is that correct? The finance meeting? You
So
don't
if
have
I
a,
can- If I can make another
a specific.
another recommendation and compromise. If the chair of the finance committee is available on the 17th, I'm open to having the more specific regular finance meeting on the 17th, and we could have it at an earlier time during the day. And then we keep the 29th as a work, and change that to a workshop, since that's what the staff is planning from a preparation standpoint, to give them a little bit, another week or two from the 17th to be able to come up with the presentations that they're gonna be coming up with. Right, if so, are you available on the Monday the 17th?
Monday the 17th?
Yeah, April 17th, not March 17th.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, oh yeah, that's no problem.
April 17th?
Yeah, anytime,
So,
anytime.
I keep getting March and April confused. So March 29th would be a workshop.
Right.
April 17th
Right.
would be,
Finance.
a finance meeting
That's good.
at 3.
Okay, it could be earlier. Okay.
At-
April
I wouldn't go-
7th.
Yeah, 3 o'clock.
So does the 29th work for a workshop?
We already had a finance meeting in March, right?
Right.
Right.
So now our April finance meeting would be on the 17th.
No, we didn't have one yet.
Yeah.
But that's okay. No, we're gonna have one on the 22nd and the 29th. We canceled the 22nd, now we'll have it on the 29th.
That'd be, but
Oh, that's the
that'd
workshop.
be a workshop.
Yeah, so we're not having one in March, unless you can fit one in
Well, the
during the day.
finance
My
committee.
calendar. What about the 27th?
Yeah, 27th works.
Of March?
Yeah.
27th of March, yeah, for the finance, just moving it from the 22nd
Yeah.
to the 27th.
Yeah.
That's finance.
And the
And what we
29th is
wanna
the
have on-
workshop.
And what we want to have on the agenda is you want to start looking at line items yearly, and we want to look at, one of the biggest ones, obviously, we're looking at payroll as well, at some point in time. Doesn't have to be at the same time, whenever you put it together.
All right.
We will do our best to bring the best, most current information we have to the committee meeting on the 27th, and we'll shoot for like a 3 o'clock start, and that's just going to be the finance committee. Okay.
Perfect.
And then the workshop
And the
on the
workshop's
29th at 5.
At 5.
At 5.
Right.
workshop.
Okay.
Because that's, we gotta make it at a time that the public can attend.
And then tentatively, the April finance committee will be on April 17th.
Correct.
Again, maybe at 3 o'clock or something like that. Okay.
Okay.
And while we're here, what are we doing on April 5th? Are we meeting, are we not meeting?
Well, if you guys meet, I'm not gonna be able to be here, so I don't know what you're gonna meet on.
So we're in the process of looking at our agenda to see how many items there are. There's some flexibility that we may want to use it for another purpose, keep the meeting date, but different purpose, but I'm hearing Director Hernandez will not be there.
Well, we can't all be at every meeting, it's not gonna happen.
Yeah, I mean, if there's enough things for the agenda, let's have just a regular board meeting. If there's not, then.
So then that means April 26th is now going to be a board workshop. April
Correct.
26th, because it was going to be the
Finance committee.
finance.
Right.
So now it'll be the board workshop.
At 5 p.m.
Again, it's on a Wednesday, so that should help everybody's schedule
Right,
out.
April 26th will be a 5 PM board workshop.
Right.
Okay.
So it's just a matter of staff's gonna determine if there's enough, board business to have a board meeting on the 5th.
Right.
All right.
All right. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Progress.
One speaker, Mr. Hunsaker.
I'd like to commend the board for its patience and tact in dealing with the previous speakers. It's something that no one isn't usually in your position understands just what you have to go through. As far as the finance and the rate structure, we're talking about a very dramatic shift in structuring. This is going to have many consequences. This is going to reverberate throughout the district. And I think the public needs to be a part of this in order to deal with those issues right up front. The big increase that was suggested for 5/8 and 3/4 inch meters for very small users is sort of a shock, and I remember a couple of members sort of taking a breath when they saw the figures that were there. And of course, there still was much to be resolved in as far as multi-family units and in agriculture. Those need to be discussed in great detail because they will have a big impact, especially if you have Newland Sierra up there and they do a whole bunch of agriculture and pumping charges and issues. I do have a question that I want to raise. What determines when a 218 process begins? Is it because a certain class of individuals are affected, or if it is the whole class?
In general, it's a property-related fee, and the courts have interpreted the rates to be a property-related fee, for example.
Yeah.
Okay?
So-
That's the closest, that's the best definition I can give you. And-
Now,
Okay.
if there was a general overall spreading of all the cost of pumping across the whole district, wouldn't that be something that would require some sort of 218 process?
Good question, but pump charges have been one of the charges that have been exempt, and there's
Okay.
authority on that. It's just the way this has evolved.
Okay, so there is a legal precedent?
Yes, yes, that's why
forward.
that's why the pump charges are not 218. Okay?
But if we spread it over the whole
There's a
district.
conversation.
would
Still
that-
pump charges.
Not a conversation,
Yeah,
all communication.
yeah. Okay, yeah.
Well, I think pump charges can be wrapped up into general rate considerations. I mean, it can all, it doesn't have to be 218 notice, but it can be incorporated into it. It's not to say that it has to be separate.
At the rate we're going, it probably will be anyways, and we just push it out 60 days. Might as well wait another 30 more and just do it all at one time.
So we may come to that. All right, moving on to item 2.4, resolution concurring in nomination to the Executive Committee of the Association of California Water Agencies Joint Powers Insurance Authority. Who is taking
I'll take it. So ACWA JPIA is seeking nominations for their executive committee. What you have in front of you is a request for support in the nomination of Melody McDonald, who is with the San Bernardino Valley Water Conservation District. And ACWA needs 3 nominations, or you need 3 agencies to adopt a resolution supporting any nominees. So the item before you is, do you want to support Ms. McDonald's nomination?
I move that we support.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to support Melody.
Question? Does anybody know who she is? Why? What?
Yeah, I met her once.
What?
I met her once.
I did too, a long time ago.
Well, then I'm definitely going to abstain, because I don't know the woman from Adam's Ox.
I work closely with her.
I was basing off of Tom's recommendation.
Oh, then I gotta change.
No.
Okay. If I could just say, there was a thing in there that said she has over 25 years' experience in the water industry, and she's a past member of, here, I'll let you see it, of ACWA and CWA.
Oh, yeah, I know who this woman
And you've
is.
seen her before, I'm sure.
Yes, I'm sure.
She was
Okay.
on the milk
yeah.
carton.
Yeah.
Jim just had to be sold.
All right.
Now that I've seen her.
I believe we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? I hope not. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Okay, carried unanimously. All right. Slowly, methodically, on to reports. 3.1, General Manager.
All right, I'll try to keep this brief. So the board knows that we've tested the water at 3 schools within the district boundaries. We have gotten requests for 15 additional schools to be tested. So the remaining 11 schools in the San Marcos Unified School District, the 3 schools that are on the high-tech campus, and 1 school in Escondido. We've completed the majority of those additional requests, and by early next week, we'll have completed all of the lead testing.
Is that a charge that, obviously, we're expending monies? Are we getting reimbursement on any of that?
We are not.
That's
It is
just
the
our good service.
Well, it's a requirement, it's a mandate that the water districts work with the school districts when requested to go ahead and do this. So we're going out, and we're grabbing the samples, we're getting the testing done, and we provide the results to the school district.
Then would you make a concerted effort to put that in the splash or the something, because at the fine job that Director Sinella did at the caucus the other night, there was a woman who was obviously worried about and claiming that, we're poisoning our children with lead and all that and hocus pocus. She was obviously misinformed completely. So I think it's imperative that we set the record straight as to how many, why it's taking place, and what we've found. Because
And most importantly, I think when people hear about, lead being in one drinking fountain, they automatically think it's because the whole water source is contaminated, right? And that is absolutely, I think this lady might have been thinking the same thing. And that's absolutely not the case. And we gotta be very clear about that, the water that we're providing to the school district and all of our other customers has no lead in it. It was once it got into this particular drinking fountain that's owned and maintained and operated and everything else by the school district is where the lead contaminates the water.
Good point, once it gets past the meter, it's beyond our control.
And that was not anywhere close to what she understood. And she broadcast this to 60 people, and I'm sure 40 of them went home going, oh my God, Flint, Michigan all over again. So.
And I want to give a big kudos to Ed Pedrazi and his water ops team, because we are the leading agency in this. Most other agencies, when I talk to them, they're just in the process of starting to talk to their school districts. We're almost done with it, so good job.
We expect nothing less.
Thank you.
A story I heard, just to understand what people do. I mean, I was at the credit union the other day, and the girl I was serving, who knows that I'm on the board for VWD, said, yeah, I heard about that lead that they have in Richland Elementary School. And I said, Richland Elementary School? Oh, she goes, no, in the middle school, but my kid goes to Richland Elementary, and that's not that far away.
Yeah.
They don't.
Do they drink out of the same
I had
fountain?
to explain to her that we've checked 3 of them, and it was the water fountain, and that's been, but there were like 6 people listening to me when I explained it.
Yeah.
The problem is when you just put it out there in mail, I mean, that's what we're here as a board for, to do that outreach and let people know. Because how many mailings, people don't read it, they toss it, but I think it's good that we get out there, but that's what people do. They gossip about negative, not about positive.
Yeah, it's, and I was really glad that I volunteered for that panel, because when this came up, I was able to set the record straight right away. But we're dealing with, some of it's unfounded fears, but I can certainly understand if they read something, especially with all the news that's going on with Flint and everything, that there could be some fear. So if we're not proactive in our communication, and then kind of making the matter even worse is there's people out in the community who, write long emails that just are filled with lies and everything like that, that just, really makes this whole matter that much more important, that we're out in the public and that we're doing everything we can to communicate the truth and set the record straight.
Is the school district making any discussion about this?
I'm not sure. I know the school district has reached out to us to do the coordination, what they're doing with their parents and the students. I don't know.
As long as they're not telling them it's in the water.
As a parent, yeah, I have received it, and.
Oh, there has been a notice?
There has been communication.
Oh, okay.
It doesn't absolutely say, this has nothing to do with Vallecitos water, but it also doesn't say this is Vallecitos' fault either. That's just kind of more vague.
All right.
I have to say, I'm really sorry. I tried to get to that symposium the other night, but I couldn't get the lead out of my pants.
Get out of here.
Have some smile.
Okay.
All right, I was trying to keep my updates brief.
Yeah,
Just a
forget it.
brief update on the 16-inch Techite sewer pipe failure that we had. The repairs are all made. We're virtually done with the above-ground stuff, restoring the ground to condition as close to as it was before, and then we'll turn it over to the HOA for them to do whatever improvements they want to do. And we will be, I believe we'll be pressure washing the street that was the public street that had sewage going across it. And then we'll get some sign-off from both the HOA and from the city of Carlsbad that we've done our share of restoring it back to its pre-failure condition. The Avocado Grove, we will be doing our well production test tomorrow, I believe it is. So we've got that all coordinated, and the testing will be done. Is it a one-day test, Ed? Okay, so, and then
It took 2 months.
we'll share the results with the board.
Is this the well that is in the aquifer that we don't have? I just want to be clear. No, oh, good, different aquifer.
This is up on the hill.
But the data that you'll bring, will it, gallons per minute?
Yep.
And will it also talk about the quality of the water?
I don't believe they're doing any quality. It's production.
Just production?
Yeah.
But, well, could we do that? Because really,
We can grab samples while they're doing the
yeah, would we
production
do
test.
that? Because really, if the water, big deal, you got a lot of water, but if it's all salty, we don't care. So I would ask that we do a test or so, just to get some idea of
I would ask that you make sure you bring caps with you, because when that geyser blows, and you'll be able to cap it.
That's right, man.
So you said to Jim.
It's okay. Yeah. You're gonna be talking on the other side of your mouth someday.
The board may recall back on February 23rd, we had a water main break on Rancheros Drive right by the freeway entrance there. Fortunately, we were able to isolate that line, that section of pipe. No customers are out of service, and we're doing the ultimate repairs this evening. So we have to do night work. The city wouldn't let us shut that down, so this evening we'll be out there, and the plan is to have the lanes reopened by rush hour in the morning, probably like 6, 7 o'clock. So don't drive home that way. Let's see, what else do I have? Talked about the Finance Committee already. The Water Authority is starting to do their rate studies, or their rate analyses. They are proposing to bring something forward to their board on April 27th. So we're starting to get some preliminary numbers from them. And the last thing I wanted to mention is that we will be doing some smoke testing in our, I'm sorry.
On the Water Authority, if the board, if there's consensus, I'd like to inquire with the Water Authority, if they could give us like a synopsis or some sort of report on what either operational cost efficiency and reduction processes they've gone through in the last year or two, just to, I'm assuming they're gonna do their rate studies, they're gonna come back and say, we need this much money, right? So I'd like to see if it's appropriate for us to ask them as one of their member agencies. I'm sure that they've done it. I'm not saying that they haven't, but I'm just not aware of it because I'm not on their board. But I would love to know if they, if they could outline and provide us like a 1 or 2 page, information sheet.
We can certainly ask them to do that. So it's funny you brought that up. Just before I came down here, I received a email from the County Water Authority, and Maureen Stapleton, their general manager, is going to be making a presentation at the San Marcos City Council meeting to talk about water rates and things. I don't know how she got roped into that. But the concern that they kind of expressed in there is that from a staffing perspective, to get to all 23 member agencies and all the cities in the county, it would be very difficult. But what we can ask them to do is to prepare some, like a summary, whether it be a PowerPoint or just an informational packet
Yeah, if they
for
put together
distribution.
a 1 or 2 pager, they
Yep.
can send it out to all the agencies.
I'll ask them to do that.
But laser focused on what are the cuts that they've made, if any.
Yeah.
It might be one sentence, we haven't made any cuts, we don't cut. I don't know. But,
Do we know when that meeting is going to be?
The San Marcos?
The city council meeting?
I will forward it, I don't remember, I'll forward the email to the
Thank
board
you.
at the end of this meeting.
If she's available to go to San Marcos City Council, she should be available to come to one of her member agencies' board meetings? I'm just guessing.
Well, if I could step in here on it's my report, but actually I had talked to Maureen about having her come out and talk to us and give a presentation both on the rates, and she was also willing a little bit later down to do, consider one on the water fix issues and what the dilemma is and how that will impact us, and also on the efforts going on with the Metropolitan. So there's 3 different options that I'd already talked to her about. I did not think of a letter, and that's an excellent idea, and thank you for taking care of that, Glenn.
Oh, good.
I had a question related to their rate development. Do they take into account the court ruling with the lawsuit with Metropolitan in rates going forward, assuming that?
So they're certainly mindful of that, but the legal process is still going through the appeal process, so they don't want to do anything assuming they get the money coming out of that. But they're in their long-range forecasting, they are starting to reflect those dollars out there. Did you? And I started to say, we're going to be doing some smoke testing in the wastewater system just north of Palomar College. We had a large increase in flows in that area, so we think there may be some inflow into the line that isn't permitted. So we do some smoke testing to determine that out. And Ed, I don't remember when the smoke testing is going to occur. 21st. So you may get calls from people saying there's smoke coming out of the manholes and smoke coming out of whatever. So, and that's,
And tell them it's marijuana.
I was gonna say, you notify the fire department.
yeah, but it's hard to notify the people driving by. Though, so. But anyway, that's the end of my report.
All right, thank you. District Legal Counsel.
Just briefly, the San Diego Regional Water Quality Control Board met today, and the board met and passed a resolution supporting the path forward for the nutrient load reductions in Lake San Marcos and San Marcos Creek watershed. And they were, the board required all of the parties to be present and present their support or opposition. And after listening to everything, they moved forward and supported that resolution. So that's a good thing. If I can report that in open session, it's not a closed session issue.
What was the name of that agency again?
That's called the San Diego Regional Water Quality Control Board. It basically has in charge of this region the water quality control. So if we have a spill, we report to.
So is that like a subset of the
State.
statewide?
Yes.
Okay, so those,
Yeah.
so are they, does it consist of those statewide members?
It consists of local appointed members as opposed to state.
Okay, who appoints them?
The governor.
But they're locally, they reside locally?
Yes, yeah, like at one point, Jim Dotson in my office was gonna sit on that board, but we just didn't feel that it would be appropriate considering everything we had going on from a conflict standpoint.
Great, thanks.
I don't know who to ask, if it's Jeff or who it is, but I saw a dead body laying on the hill back there.
Oh.
And I wonder if that's the guy that's trying to appraise it and he died? I mean, how long could it take to get an appraisal on a piece of property?
6 weeks at
I
least?
think we're,
It's been longer than that.
I think we've, the contract's been awarded, you know.
Who's handling
The
that?
contract is 75 days because of the analysis that it takes.
Yeah. It's,
Okay.
And that's already taken place?
Yeah, we're already, very much, we are already within our 75, I mean, 75 days isn't over since when the board awarded it. When the board awarded it, it still took about a week and a half or so to get the contracts in order. And so we're well within, we're probably about, I can't recall when the last date was, but I believe we're about 30 days into our 75.
Okay, great, looking forward to it. Thank you.
All right. San Diego County Water Authority, anything else to add?
Well, I would like to add that it was a very interesting meeting. All of the committees, there's 5 different committees that meet, and they're all were presenting their draft work plan for the calendar years 2017 and 18. And if you would like any of those, I'll be happy to email them or send them to you so you can see what the projects are in all the different committees. One of the first committees was engineering and operations, and one of the things that we authorized was to have the general manager enter into terms of agreement with the solar power for solar power, and what they're working on is the floating voltaic power system on Olevenhagen.
Oh.
I don't know if you're familiar with that, but they're going to work out they're working on that. They're hoping it will produce 6 megawatts of energy. It's going to cover 20 acres, which is about 10% of the lake. And they're using a unique design for operational constraints, and it should be operational by the end of 2018. And it was interesting, they actually only had one company that could actually fulfill the requirements, and they're going to set that up as a public-private partnership. The company is called Pristine Sun, if you'd like to research it. And they will do the complete funding of the project, and they'll lead all the activities. The Water Authority will provide the site, and then the revenue sharing will be split so that the Water Authority should make $3.2 million over 25 years, and there'll be an equal sharing of the intellectual property. So everyone was quite excited about that. Then I'll skip really quick to just to let you know that we just recently, you've all heard of the Hans Doe breakfast that you go to. Well, they have a foundation, and they gave $15,000 to the San Diego Water Authority, and they used that to update the display that's at the Fleet Science Museum. It's been there for 15 years. I didn't know it'd been that long, but it's the story of water, and with this, they were able to, it hadn't been updated since, I think, 2007 or 8. So they hadn't, the desal wasn't in it, and they've added that. They've brought in all the, and they've done a whole story about the water cycle and IPD, and they recommend everyone go have a look at it. They're very, very, very proud of it. I was going to go through legislation, but that was quite long, so I thought maybe if you're interested, I can send you the copies of even like the bills that are being considered at this time. Yes?
I had a question. How many committees does the Water Authority have?
They have 5 committees. They have Engineering and Operations Committee. Each committee is about 20 members. You serve on 2. The Water Planning, Imported Water, Administration and Finance, and Legal and Legislative Outreach.
Do you attend all 5 committees?
I do. I attend all 5, but I did not vote. You can own, and you can contribute, but it's after the board member, committee members have spoken. You don't have to be there, but you do have to be there for yours.
So you attend 5 separate committee meetings in addition to your board meetings?
Yes, I do.
Wow, that's really impressive.
Well, thank you.
Are these open to the public, these committee meetings?
They're open to the public.
What days are they?
It's on the 4th Thursday of every month.
So the
It's the
committees
same
meet at
as
the
the-
same time?
Oh, one day.
Well, it's one long day. The committee start at 9. They hope to have the committees all finished by 3, which is the goal for the actual
So they
board
meet
meeting.
simultaneously?
No, they meet one right after the other.
Oh, okay. So they work from
You
like
start at 9,
to 9
and then they
10.
have a lunch break, and then you
Wow.
finish it up. And
Pretty impressive.
You
How they're
do.
using that committee system.
But I was going to tell you that this year, and this may have changed, but there were like 2,500 bills presented. Some of them are placeholding bills. And if you're interested in it, I can get you, if you'd like, just a list. There's 5 that they're very interested in supporting, and they have set up basic goals. But I'd rather not go through that as late as it is? Would you like me to send
Yeah,
it
if
to
you can
you?
email, that'd be great.
All right, I will do that.
If it's appropriate, or you can send it to staff and then they can blank copy us.
Probably send it to me.
No, I would give it to you, Glenn. I wouldn't do it. And then, I think that's the gist of it. There was a lot. There's a lot going on, and as you know, everything is up in the air, and people are trying to save money and trying to figure out where it's gonna come from, and trying to see if there'll be water, and how do you all take care of it. And as one person said, it was the worst of hydrological times, it was the best of hydrological times. It just depended on where you were standing. So,
Thank you. Okay, Encino Wastewater Authority Capital Improvement Committee.
We had our meeting this morning, a couple of items. Engineering services for the E-Camp was approved with Kenny Jenks, your organization over there. Oh, close your ears, you can't hear that. And there was a little bit of discussion about that. And then there was authorization for the Energy and Emissions Strategic Plan and the Biosolids Management Plan, wherein we're hoping to find more revenues. You remember the fog, the fat oil and grease thing that took place? They're getting a 25% increase in efficiency out of that methane into the plant. So they're looking for more, and I think there's opportunities for Encina to become totally 100% independent of the energy debacle.
Yeah, I think they're at about 80%.
Yeah. So they're working in the right direction. So that was the capital committee.
I have a question on Encina. It came to my attention the other day from Ari DeYoung, who grabbed my arm and said, "Come here, talk to me." I said, "Hey, Ari, how are you?" It was great. He says, "What's the chances of you getting Encina to accept our sewage from my son's tanks?"
Interesting you asked that question.
I heard how much they were paying in San Diego. That would be a source of income. It used to go to Encina. Okay. So
I'm on it.
Okay.
Rest my case.
All over it, because there's money to be made there.
How you betcha? There's money.
It's all about resource recovery now with wastewater.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great work, Jim. It sounds like you guys are accomplishing great things down there on your committee. How many committees does Encina have?
Encina?
Yeah.
Two.
Just the two, capital and policy.
Do they meet the same day but separate?
No.
Back to back? You guys meet
No.
separately?
Separate meetings.
Does the entire board attend those meetings?
No, it's a group of, on the capital committee, there's 5 of us.
5.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you ever attend the committee that Director Ellenthorpe
No.
sits on?
I don't care what he
Director
does.
Ellenthorpe, do you ever attend?
I don't, but I do care.
Okay. I'm new. Just
Yep.
trying to learn what goes on in the industry.
Okay, so I'll report on the Policy and Finance Committee. We met on March 7th. We did 2 things. We reviewed the 2016 Annual Pretreatment Program Report, and we authorized staff to solicit proposals for the FY 2017 ocean outfall maintenance and external inspection services. That was it.
Oh, standing committee, still on there?
And standing committees.
Oh, I have one.
All right.
Most of you don't know, but the finance committee meeting met. It's still a committee, yeah. The committee meeting met, and it was a lively discussion. I will tell you, much more lively in the future now that we're gonna be really regulated to what I really wanted it to be in the first place, was to go line by line and look at everything, all stones unturned, as we get all these corners cleaned out from years, apparently, judging by what we tried to pass tonight, from years of not looking at it completely. So I'm looking forward to it. I want to thank you. And there are notes in the board packet, but also they are being recorded now to make sure that nothing goes unturned. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. Directors' reports on meetings, conferences, seminars attended. Start with Director Evans.
I think I did, but I don't remember.
I had to write it down.
I mean, I'm looking at this calendar and going, oh my gosh, when was the last time I spoke, so. I guess.
Well, I wrote mine down, so,
Oh,
but I'll be brief.
I think I went to COA, that was the one?
Yeah.
Okay, COA, okay.
February 21st was the Water Council. Tim Quinn spoke, talked about the priorities. I have them here. You were there, buddy. 26 was the ACWA conference in Washington, D.C. Big movement there, ladies and gentlemen. The Word of Bill, and I'm going to leave a bunch of it over to Greg, because he was there as well. And then I happened to see Daryl Issa at the Cigar Lounge, and I'm not getting per diem for that, by the way. And we talked about water, and I don't know if Calvert's a senator or an assemblyman, but he indicated.
He's a congressman.
Congressman?
Appropriations Committee.
Yeah, he was a big help on that as well.
What committee?
Appropriations? Appropriations, right. And the good news is, these travels that I've been making back to Washington, we finally got money authorized. Now we have our oar in the water. We just have to get those monies appropriate. The bad news, it's only 25%. So we got to come up with the rest, but perhaps Prop 1 could be that other 75% to see if we can't get some of these things done, including looking at their aquifer. Let's see, pushing infrastructure was a big deal. The North County EDC, a film commission is coming to our neighborhood. Very exciting. That was very exciting. And
We've heard that before.
Pardon?
We've heard that before.
Yes, I know, but these people seem to be excited about it. So I'm putting faith in them. And we already talked about the Capital Committee.
All right. Well, I attended the same 3 conferences. I'll just add on the CASA Aqua DC conference. There was a lot of great speakers, some political reporters, a couple panels with congressional committee staffers. We heard from probably 9 or 10 California congressmen, mostly from the northern part of the state, and a couple perspectives, interesting perspectives from campaign insiders. But really, my big takeaway for this trip was that there seems to be, one of the few bipartisan things seems to be an appetite for big infrastructure spending. I mean, you know, they're talking on the order of $1 trillion total, and maybe 100 to 150 billion for water-related projects. That comes with some pretty big challenges. You know, for one, the Republicans don't want it to look like anything that Obama might have done in his stimulus package back when he first came on in 2008. So there's kind of a challenge there in how they craft a package, and there's very few details on any kind of infrastructure package yet, because you know, the Trump administration's priorities are healthcare, tax reform, and immigration before infrastructure. So what they're saying is maybe a year and a half down the road, this infrastructure package may start coalescing or coming together. So that was kind of the big takeaway I saw. I think the other kind of challenge for the Trump administration, and I think it's probably Donald Trump himself, is that when you say infrastructure, he thinks shiny objects, you know, roads and bridges, and so part of the challenge is to get his staff to realize there's a lot more to infrastructure than just roads and bridges. So I think people have been pounding on them for water related, and I think it's finally starting to sink in. So administration people are starting to talk about water infrastructure needs as well. I saw Scott Pruitt, the EPA, the new EPA head appointed by the Trump administration, is talking a lot about water infrastructure investments. So I think it's good. It's starting to get more attention. And that was it. Very, very interesting conference.
I did attend the ACWA Legislative Symposium that was in Sacramento. I'm starting to get better. I actually drove up one day and drove back the next, with a 6-hour meeting in between. So old age is doing well for my driving. It was all very interesting. I think the best takeaway that I had is they were pushing us on infrastructure as we went to talk to our legislative people. to talk about infrastructure, because something I didn't know, which I found interesting, is the famous canal that we have coming from Sacramento to here. Well, that's suffered greatly from subsidence. And right now, if it was pushed to do 100%, the best it can do is 85%. That's the best it can do, because subsidence has dropped entire areas and turned them into chalk. So it's like, wow, that's an infrastructure problem. But seeing we don't get any water from that one, not our problem. I thought that was interesting. And then, yes, at the the North County EDC, we listened to another production company come and say how excited they were, but they're looking for money. So they're excited as long as they get money. But he's excited about the prospect. They looked at the San Marcos location, which is the old energy plant out there. And I thought it was very interesting. They were very excited, but it was very good to know. A lot of people there were excited talking about it. That's the only 2 meetings that I did.
Yeah, I went to COWA with Tim Quinn's presentation. I think you guys were all there. It's pretty standard ACWA presentation and just kind of an update on what's going on. And then I went to the San Diego North EDC meeting as well. And yeah, I mean, it wasn't water related, it was film related, but it was definitely interesting. And I think, one of the key things I get from those meetings though too is just the interaction with the folks who attend from the other water agencies and the local government agencies.
Yeah, I have to add on to that, I talked to Kim for 15, 20 minutes, got a lot of information out of her that I didn't know.
Mr. President, two items. I know it wasn't a trip, but I commend Director Sinella for his fine job at the Republican caucus. I went, quite frankly, apprehensive as to, but it was well attended, it was well delivered. Director Sinella stood up for us when necessary and passed out information. The other benefit, which surprised me, and I don't know why, because it happens at the EDC, is inevitably there are people that come up as soon as, and I had my badge on, that I was watching. Oh, really? You're there? And so I chatted for 15 minutes with 2 or 3 people before the presentation. And so being out there, getting a chance to spread the word, I think it's working, it's essential, and we need to keep doing it. The other thing, I don't know how many people bumped into, National Geographic had a presentation on television last night, hour and a half, water and power, the California heist. All the people we know and we've seen at these conferences were there. I happened to read today, because I was looking for the bullet points on the Tim Quinn meeting, that it was screened in Sacramento yesterday, and Tim Quinn said he was misrepresented entirely, and he thought it was just another slam against water. But it did really open my eyes as to the need of some of the communities in our state that, I mean, it's just deplorable. I mean, deplorable. I mean, we worry about a little salty water or whatever the hell, and these poor devils are trucking water from miles away. So, and there is a companion program next Tuesday called Parched, and I have no idea, but it sounds like it's a connection there. So if you can tune it in or go on demand, it's well worth your time to watch it, because it was very informative.
Thank you. Okay, other business meetings, information on EDC Economic Summit and WEF Headwaters Tour in the package. 5.1, Director's Comments, Future Agenda Items. Director Snow.
Okay, just wanted to comment on the 2016 year in review that was passed out at the beginning of the meeting. First thing I wanted to give kudos to Chris and his team. This is a very high quality piece, probably the best piece that I've seen since I've been on the board, from a content and presentation. style and just everything about it's just really, really nice. My question though is what are we doing with it?
Yeah, I'm not sure what the distribution plan is, but we can.
Chris had mentioned that they only printed 100.
Only
so-
printed 100 of them.
Yeah.
So I don't know, is this just for board consumption? Because if it is, then although it's very nice, I can't imagine it was cheap.
No.
But if this is public, this is the kind of quality that we should be pushing out to the public.
Yeah, we can take a look at the per run cost, per printing costs. We'd probably put some in the lobby if people come in and want to get it, but it certainly wasn't intended to be a mass mailer or anything like that.
No, yeah, it's pretty heavy, but maybe we, again, maybe we could have, if we had some, we could leave some, like in, I think the city has in their city hall, like kind of public area, like a place for like brochures and stuff. Those types of things, but maybe somewhere down the school district.
Well,
But-
can we publish it on our website?
It'll be available on the
Oh, good.
website. Yeah.
But the other thing I wanted to add too is, I do recognize there's a significant cost to get it to this quality. But maybe what we do is, for future years, because I think we should do this again, is, in lieu of doing one of our splash magazines, make this the communication at that time, not necessarily mail it out, but print more of them, and then get them out to the community, through us handing them out, through giving them to the city, et cetera. And to offset the cost of that, maybe we don't do, what does the splash come out, quarterly? Yeah, so maybe we miss one, maybe this is one of our quarterly reports, the first quarter report, because it's the year in review, and then we do splash on Q2, 3, 4. Just a suggestion.
I'd like to congratulate staff on the new Between the Pipes. We're not calling it splash anymore, we're calling it Between the Pipes, which is great. Good information on it, but my kudos would be a piece like this to supplement the beginning of the year, the previous year. I think it's a great idea. It's a nice piece, and it's a shame to only print 100, because it costs a lot of money to print 100 of those. Not that much more to do 1,000, 2,000, I mean, it's just, but I would do the same thing. Yeah, 100 of them is kind of a waste of it's just for us, but it's a great piece, and I concur. It's a great piece. A lot of time was spent on it. We need to get it out to the public. We need to let them know what we're doing.
We'll consider those as we prepare the budget.
Yeah, there you go. There's a line item for us to.
I had one more thing too, I'm sorry.
Sure, go ahead.
I did receive some feedback as part of this pump charges discussions about members of the public not being able to readily access contact information for the board members. Could you, somebody, add my BWD email address to my profile?
Yeah, that's probably a good opportunity. If all the directors are okay with that on the profile, we'll add the contact information, phone number and email.
Yeah, whether you're giving the district's phone number or our personal phone numbers?
That's up to you.
That's up to you, I guess.
District. for
Yeah,
me.
I'd like to have my district phone number, no, I don't have a phone number here, but, you can put the district phone number, but I was thinking just to contact Mike Sinella directly.
Email.
My BWD email address.
Okay.
I'll respond to it within 24 hours.
Okay.
Any other comments? Director Hernandez?
No, I'm good.
Director Evans?
I would love to go home.
Okay. Then we are
Adjourn.
That